The elevator doors opened to reveal a woman in a torn blazer standing over Ethan Cole's collapsed 5-year-old son. Blood trickled from the boy's forehead. Security guards rushed forward, but she didn't move, just kept pressure on the wound with her scarf, whispering calm words the child seemed to believe. Ethan's world, built on control and precision, tilted on its axis. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know she'd been fired that morning for being late to save a stranger, didn't know that in 6 months she'd be his wife. And he certainly didn't know she'd destroy everything he thought he understood about love. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end. Trust me, you won't see what's coming. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, the kind that turned Manhattan sidewalks into rivers and made taxi drivers rich. Lena Hart stood under the torn awning of a bodega on Fifth Avenue, watching her phone die in her hand. 4:47 a.m. The interview was at 9 o'clock. She had exactly 4 hours and 13 minutes to cross the city, and her last $7 wouldn't even cover a subway card. She'd pawned her laptop yesterday. Sold her grandmother's earrings last week. The eviction notice was dated for Friday. 3 days. The bodega owner, Mr. Kim, appeared in the doorway with a paper cup of coffee. "On the house," he said, not meeting her eyes. That's how she knew she looked as desperate as she felt. She took it anyway. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Thank you," she managed. "That company, Apex Holdings, big building, glass tower near Central Park." He nodded like he knew exactly why her hands were shaking. "My daughter, she applied there too. They didn't even call her back." Lena forced a smile. "Maybe I'll get lucky." Maybe. But his tone said he'd seen too many maybes crash and burn. She started walking at 5:15, coffee going cold in her hand. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the damage was done. Her only decent blazer was soaked through, and her portfolio, the one she'd printed at the library, was starting to warp inside its plastic sleeve. She passed closed shops and early morning delivery trucks, trying not to think about the studio apartment she'd lose, the neighbors she'd miss, or the fact that at 30 years old, she was one bad break away from sleeping in her car. Except she'd sold the car in July. At the corner of 68th and Madison, she saw the old woman. It wasn't dramatic. No cry for help, no crowd gathering, just an elderly lady in an expensive coat, one leg wedged between the broken slats of a construction grate, trying and failing to pull herself free. Her cane lay a few feet away. A businessman walked past without looking. A jogger swerved around her. Lena's interview was in 3 hours and 42 minutes. She kept walking, made it half a block before her feet stopped moving. "Damn it," she whispered and turned back. The woman looked up as Lena approached, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or resignation. She had sharp cheekbones and silver hair pulled into a tight bun, the kind of woman who'd probably never asked anyone for help in her life. "Don't move," Lena said, kneeling in the puddle beside her. "You'll make it worse." "I'm quite aware." The woman's voice was clipped, irritated. "I've been stuck here for 10 minutes. Apparently chivalry died along with common decency." Lena examined the grate. The woman's heel had punched through one of the rotted slats and twisted sideways. Her ankle was already swelling. "This is gonna hurt." "Everything hurts when you're 73, darling. Get on with it." Lena worked carefully, supporting the woman's calf while wiggling the heel free. The woman hissed through her teeth but didn't pull away. When the foot finally came loose, Lena helped her stand, letting the woman lean against her shoulder. "Can you walk?" "Not well." The woman tested her weight and winced. "I need to get to my car. It's just around the corner." Lena glanced at her phone. 6:02 a.m. 3 hours, 58 minutes. "All right," she said. "Let's go." The car turned out to be a black Mercedes with a driver who looked like he could bench press a refrigerator. He jumped out the moment he saw them, face going pale. "Mrs. Cole! What happened?" "Incompetent city planning happened, Marcus. Help me inside." Lena stepped back, ready to disappear. But the woman, Mrs. Cole, caught her wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "What's your name?" "Lena. Lena Hart." "Where were you going in such a hurry, Lena Hart?" "Job interview. Apex Holdings. She checked her phone again. "I really need to go." Mrs. Cole's expression shifted into something unreadable. Apex Holdings? Yeah, it's probably a long shot anyway, but get in the car. Lena blinked. I'm sorry? My driver will take you. It's the least I can do. Mrs. Cole was already being helped into the back seat. She patted the leather beside her. Come on, unless you'd prefer to walk in wet shoes. Every instinct told Lena this was strange, that rich old ladies didn't just offer rides to strangers, that there had to be a catch, but her shoes were wet and the clock was ticking, and she was so damn tired of doing everything the hard way. She got in. The car was warm, leather seats, tinted windows, the faint smell of expensive perfume. Lena sat stiffly, trying not to drip on anything that probably cost more than her rent. Mrs. Cole studied her with the intensity of a jeweler examining a stone. You're nervous. I'm unemployed, Lena corrected. Nervous comes with the territory. What happened to your last job? Laid off. Budget cuts. They kept the managers and fired everyone under them. She smiled without humor. Trickle-down economics in action. And before that? Marketing coordinator at a startup that folded. Before that, graphic design for a firm that got bought out. I'm not unlucky. I'm just bad at picking employers. Or good at picking employers who don't deserve you. Lena glanced over. You don't know anything about me. I know you stopped to help a stranger when you had somewhere important to be. I know you're honest enough to admit you're desperate. And I know... Mrs. Cole tilted her head. You're underestimating yourself. The car glided through traffic like it didn't have to follow the same rules as everyone else. Lena watched the city blur past, feeling unmoored. This woman talked like she could see through skin and bone straight into the messy truth underneath. What do you do, Mrs. Cole? I meddle. The old woman's smile was thin and precise. And occasionally, I fix things. They arrived at Apex Holdings at 8:47, 13 minutes early. The building was everything Mr. Kim had described, a glass tower that reflected the sky, all sharp angles and wealth. Lena had never felt smaller. Marcus opened the door. Mrs. Cole handed Lena a business card, cream-colored, embossed lettering. If they don't hire you, she said, call that number. Thank you, really. I don't know how to... Then don't. Just go prove you're worth hiring. Lena walked into the lobby with the card tucked in her pocket and her portfolio clutched against her chest. The security desk, the marble floors, the elevator that required a key card. It all felt like a test she hadn't studied for. The receptionist on the 14th floor looked her up and down with thinly veiled disdain. Name? Lena Hart. I have a 9 a.m. with... You're late. Lena checked the wall clock. 8:51. I'm 9 minutes early. The interview was at 8:30. It says so right here. The woman tapped her screen with one lacquered nail. The floor dropped out from under Lena's stomach. No, the email said 9 o'clock. I checked 3 times. Then you checked wrong. Mr. Peterson doesn't like to be kept waiting, and he certainly doesn't appreciate candidates who can't read a calendar. The receptionist's smile was all teeth. You can reapply in 6 months. Please, if I could just explain, security will escort you out if you make a scene. Lena stood there, soaking wet and stupid, while everything she'd been holding together splintered apart. She thought about the eviction notice, about selling her grandmother's earrings for $75, about the old woman with the kind eyes who told her she was underestimating herself. She wanted to scream, wanted to flip the desk and demand fairness from a world that had never promised her any. Instead, she turned and walked back to the elevator with her head up and her hands steady, because that's what you did when you'd already lost. You didn't give them the satisfaction of watching you break. The elevator doors opened. A man stood inside, and Lena's first thought was that he looked expensive. Tailored suit, dark hair, the kind of posture that came from never having to justify your presence in a room. He had a phone pressed to his ear and didn't glance up as she stepped in. Tell him we're not negotiating, he said into the phone. His voice was cold, precise. If he wants the contract, he signs by Friday, or we move on to someone who will. Lena pressed the button for the lobby and tried to make herself invisible. I don't care if he's offended. Business isn't a feelings factory, Richard. The man finally looked up and paused. His eyes were dark, sharp, the kind that noticed everything. I'll call you back. He hung up. The elevator hummed downward. Lena stared at the numbers ticking past. Rough morning? He asked. She wasn't in the mood. You could say that. Interview didn't go well? Didn't happen. Apparently I can't read a calendar. Their loss. She glanced over, surprised. He wasn't smiling, but there was something almost human in his expression. You don't know that. You're here at 9 in the morning, soaking wet, still trying. That says more than any interview would. The doors opened to the lobby. Lena stepped out, and he followed, which seemed odd until she realized he was probably heading to the street too. For what it's worth, he said, whoever told you that you can't read was wrong. The email said 9 o'clock. Someone changed it in the system this morning. Lena stopped walking. How do you know that? Because I own the building. He extended a hand. Ethan Cole. Her brain short-circuited. Ethan Cole. The Ethan Cole. The man whose name was on half the skyscrapers in Manhattan, whose face occasionally showed up in Forbes next to words like billionaire and ruthless. She shook his hand because her body moved on autopilot. Lena Hart. The woman who helped my mother this morning. Oh. Mrs. Cole is your... She called me from the car, said she'd met someone interesting. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. She doesn't usually make mistakes about people. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I wasn't trying to... Relax, Ms. Hart. I'm not accusing you of anything. He pulled out his own phone, typed something. The interview was sabotaged. Politics. Someone on the hiring committee has a relative they wanted to place in that position. So I never had a chance. No. He said it without apology, like he was reading stock prices. But if you're interested in working for Apex, I can arrange a different position. Lena's pride reared up, defensive. I don't need charity. Good. I don't give it. He met her eyes, and she felt pinned in place. I need competent people, Ms. Hart. If you're not competent, this conversation ends now. She thought about the eviction notice, about Mrs. Cole's business card in her pocket, about every door that had slammed in her face this year. What kind of position? My mother needs someone. Personal assistant, event coordinator, general problem solver. She's difficult, demanding, and doesn't tolerate incompetence. You'd be working directly with her, which means you'd occasionally work with me. He tilted his head slightly. Interested? Why me? Because you stopped to help her when no one else did. Because you showed up to an interview even though you're clearly at the end of your rope. And because... He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully. She asked me to offer you the job, and I've learned not to ignore her instincts. Lena's head spun. This morning she'd been drowning. Now a billionaire was offering her a life raft, and every survival instinct she had was screaming that it couldn't be this simple. What's the catch? The catch, Ethan said, is that you'll earn it. My mother will make you work harder than you've ever worked. You'll fail sometimes. She'll tell you when you do. But if you can handle that, the job is yours. He handed her his business card, thicker than his mother's, embossed with gold lettering. Come to my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll discuss terms. He turned to leave, then paused. And Ms. Hart, don't be late. She watched him walk away, then looked down at the card in her hand. Ethan Cole, CEO, Apex Holdings. Below that, a phone number, an address, a chance. Okay. Lena didn't go home. She couldn't afford to, not when her Metro card was dead and walking would take 3 hours. Instead, she found a Starbucks with free Wi-Fi and nursed a small coffee for 6 hours while she researched everything she could find about Ethan Cole. The internet painted him as a phantom. No social media, no candid photos, just business articles that used words like strategic, calculating, and notoriously private. His company had absorbed 17 smaller firms in the last decade. He'd never been married, and 5 years ago his wife had died in a car accident, leaving him a widower with a young son. The son's name was nowhere. The details of the accident were sealed, but every article agreed on one thing. After his wife's death, Ethan Cole had become even more unreachable than before. Lena's phone buzzed, an unknown number. Hello? Ms. Hart, it's Margaret Cole. The old woman's voice was crisp, unmistakable. I trust my son made you an offer. He did. I'm supposed to come in tomorrow. Good. Don't embarrass me. I'll try not to. Try harder than that. A pause. You did well this morning. not many people would have stopped. Most people aren't broke enough to need the karma points. What? Margaret laughed, sharp and bright. I like you. That's inconvenient. Why? Because liking people makes it harder to be honest with them. And I'm going to need to be very honest with you soon. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, unease prickling down her spine. She went home to an apartment that smelled like mildew and old takeout. The eviction notice was still taped to her door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, poked her head out as Lena fumbled with her keys. Any luck? Maybe. I'll know tomorrow. Mrs. Chen nodded, hesitant. If you need somewhere to stay, just for a few days, my couch folds out. Lena's throat tightened. Thank you. Us broke girls gotta stick together, right? Mrs. Chen smiled, tired and real, and disappeared back inside. Lena locked herself in her apartment and sat on the floor with her back against the door. Everything she owned fit in 4 boxes. Everything she had left in the world could be loaded into a car she no longer owned. She pulled out both business cards, mother and son, cream and white, both offering versions of salvation she didn't understand yet. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., she'd find out what they really wanted. And she'd say yes, because people at the bottom didn't get to be picky. The Apex Holdings executive floor didn't feel like an office. It felt like a museum. Modern art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, silence so thick it pressed against Lena's eardrums. The receptionist here didn't sneer. She simply smiled, checked her list, and said, Mr. Cole is expecting you, 3rd door on the left. Lena's hands were sweating. She'd worn the same blazer, but she'd dried it overnight and spot-cleaned the worst stains. It would have to be enough. She knocked. Come in. Ethan Cole's office was exactly what she expected. Sleek, minimal, dominated by a desk that probably cost more than a semester of college. He stood by the window, phone in hand, and gestured for her to sit without looking over. I understand, he said into the phone. Then make it clear we're not interested in half measures. Yes, fine. Goodbye. He hung up and turned to face her. Ms. Hart. Mr. Cole. Ethan, we're going to be seeing a lot of each other. No point in formality. He sat across from her, folding his hands on the desk. Did you research me? Yes. What did you find? That you're rich, ruthless, and private. That your wife died 5 years ago. That you have a son whose name isn't anywhere online. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or just irritation. His name is Noah. He's 5, and his privacy is non-negotiable. Understood. My mother thinks you'd be good for this job. I think she's sentimental, so we're going to test her theory. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside is a contract. The position is as her personal assistant, but you'll also help coordinate events, manage schedules, and handle anything else she doesn't want to deal with. The pay is $75,000 a year, plus benefits. Lena's brain stuttered. $75,000. She'd been applying for jobs that paid $30,000. That's generous. It's market rate for someone competent. If you're not competent, you won't last long enough to see the first paycheck. He leaned back. There are conditions. Of course there were. You'll sign an NDA. Anything you see or hear about my family stays confidential. You'll be available on short notice. My mother's schedule is unpredictable. And, he paused, choosing his words, you'll be discreet. My son's existence is not a secret, but his life is kept private. If you take this job, you may occasionally interact with him. That stays between us. I can do that. Can you? His gaze was surgical, cutting through every defense she had. Because in my experience, people say they can keep secrets right up until someone offers them money not to. Lena met his eyes and didn't blink. I don't break promises. I've got plenty of flaws, but that's not one of them. For the first time, something like approval crossed his face. Good. Read the contract. If you agree, sign it. You start Monday. She opened the folder. The contract was dense, full of legal language she barely understood, but the terms were clear. Employment at will, NDA, benefits, salary. At the bottom, a line for her signature. She thought about Mrs. Chen's fold-out couch, about the eviction notice, about every closed door and dead end that had led her here. She signed. Ethan took the contract, glanced at her signature, and nodded. Welcome to Apex Holdings, Ms. Hart. Lena. He said it like he was testing the shape of it. My mother will meet you Monday morning at 8 a.m. Don't be late. I won't. She stood to leave, and his voice stopped her at the door. Lena. She turned. Thank you, he said quietly, for helping her. It was the first unguarded thing she'd heard him say. She didn't know what to do with it. Anyone would have. No, Ethan said. They wouldn't. Mad. Lena spent the weekend in a haze. She paid her rent, barely, and bought groceries for the first time in weeks. Real groceries, eggs, bread, fruit that wasn't half rotten. She sat in her apartment and ate a sandwich that tasted like hope, and tried not to think about all the ways this could still go wrong. Monday morning, she arrived at Margaret Cole's penthouse at 7:45 a.m. The doorman knew her name. That felt surreal. Margaret opened the door herself, leaning on a cane, her ankle wrapped in a brace. Punctual? Good. Come in. The penthouse was stunning. High ceilings, art that belonged in galleries, views that stretched across the entire city. Margaret led her to a sitting room where tea was already waiting. Sit. Lena sat. Margaret poured 2 cups, added sugar to one without asking, and handed it to Lena. You're nervous. I don't want to mess this up. Then don't. Margaret sipped her tea, watching her over the rim. I'm going to be blunt, Lena. I didn't hire you just because you helped me. I know. Do you? Margaret set down her cup. I hired you because my son is dying. Lena's heart stopped. What? Not literally, but he might as well be. He's 32 years old and he's already a ghost. He works, he raises Noah, and he exists. That's all. No joy, no life, no warmth. Her voice sharpened. Do you know what happens to children raised by ghosts, Lena? They become ghosts too. Exactly. Margaret leaned forward. I need you to help me fix that. I'm not a therapist. No. You're a woman who stops to help strangers even when it costs her everything. You're someone who shows up soaking wet and still fights for a chance. She smiled, sad and knowing. Someone who still believes people are worth saving. Lena shook her head. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough, and I'm not asking you to fix Ethan. I'm asking you to remind him what it feels like to be human. Margaret's eyes were steel. Can you do that? I don't even know if I can keep this job. You will. You're tougher than you think. She stood, leaning heavily on her cane. Now, let's go over my schedule. I have a charity gala in 2 weeks, a board meeting on Thursday, and a doctor's appointment tomorrow that I'm going to try to skip. Your job is to make sure I don't. And just like that, Lena was thrown into the deep end. The first week was chaos. Margaret Cole was demanding, exacting, and had the energy of someone half her age. She critiqued everything. Lena's organization system, her note-taking, the way she answered the phone. But she also noticed when Lena stayed late to fix a mistake. Noticed when Lena figured out a scheduling conflict before it became a problem. You're learning, Margaret said on Friday. Faster than I expected. I'm trying. Try harder. But there was warmth under the sharpness now. Something like approval. On Thursday of the second week, Margaret asked her to deliver documents to Ethan's office. Lena took the elevator up, knocked on his door, and found him exactly where he'd been 2 weeks ago, standing by the window, phone in hand. Ms. Hart, he glanced over. You're still here. Your mother hasn't fired me yet. Give her time. But he almost smiled. Almost. Lena set the folder on his desk. She wanted you to review these before the gala. Of course she did. He flipped it open, scanned the pages. How is she? Really? Demanding, scary, kind when she thinks I'm not looking. Ethan's expression softened, just slightly. That sounds right. Lena turned to leave. Wait. She stopped. Ethan looked at her, and for a moment she saw past the CEO, the billionaire, the wall of ice he kept between himself and the world. She saw someone tired, someone alone. She likes you, he said. I can tell. I like her too. Good. He looked back at the documents. That'll make things easier. Lena didn't know what he meant, but she felt the weight of it anyway, something unspoken, hovering just out of reach. She left his office and didn't realize until later that her hands were shaking. 3 weeks in, Margaret invited her to dinner. Not at a restaurant. at Ethan's penthouse. "It's time you met Noah," Margaret said simply. "And Ethan needs to see that you're not going to fall apart in a domestic setting." "I didn't realize that was a concern." "Everything is a concern when it comes to that boy." Lena arrived at 7, stomach in knots. The penthouse was on the Upper East Side, modern and cold, full of clean lines and empty spaces. Ethan answered the door in jeans and a sweater, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Lena, come in." She stepped inside and a small voice called from somewhere deeper in the apartment. "Grandma!" A little boy came running, dark hair, bright eyes, small for 5 but moving like he owned the world. He crashed into Margaret's legs and she caught him with a laugh. "Careful, Noah, I'm fragile." "No, you're not." He grinned up at her, then noticed Lena. His smile faded into shyness. "Who's that?" "This is Lena. She works with me." "Lena, this is my grandson Noah." Lena crouched down to his level. "Hi, Noah." He studied her seriously. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I don't know much about them." His eyes went wide, like she'd just confessed to a crime. "You have to know about dinosaurs. They're the best thing ever." "Then maybe you can teach me." He looked at his dad. Ethan nodded, and Noah's grin came back full force. "Okay, come on." He grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the living room, chattering about T-Rexes and velociraptors and something called an ankylosaurus. Lena let herself be pulled along, glancing back to see Ethan and Margaret watching. Margaret looked smug. Ethan looked conflicted. Dinner was surprisingly normal. Noah dominated the conversation, Lena asked questions, and Margaret occasionally interjected with dry commentary that made even Ethan crack a smile. It felt like a family. It felt dangerous. After Noah went to bed, Ethan walked Lena to the door. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not treating him like he's made of glass." People do that. They find out about his mother, and they get careful, like he'll break if they say the wrong thing. He's a kid. Kids are tougher than we give them credit for. Ethan studied her, and she felt that same surgical focus from their first meeting. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Being human." Lena laughed, surprised. "That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it." He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "My mother's planning something. You know that, right?" "I figured." "And you're okay with it?" "I don't know what it is yet." "Neither do I, but knowing her, it's going to be complicated." He met her eyes. "If it gets to be too much, if she pushes too hard, you can walk away. I'll make sure you land somewhere safe." It was the kindest thing anyone had offered her in months. "I'll keep that in mind." She left and didn't look back, because if she did, she might see something in his expression that she wasn't ready to name yet. The gala was in 3 days. Margaret had been preparing for weeks, seating charts, speeches, coordinating with caterers and florists, and a dozen other moving parts. Lena had become the axis it all turned on, juggling calls and confirmations and last-minute changes. On the morning of the event, Margaret summoned her to the penthouse. "We have a problem." Lena's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires a solution I don't think you're going to like." Margaret sat in her chair like a queen on a throne. "Ethan needs a date." "Okay, so find him one." "I'm looking at her." The world tilted. "No," Lena said immediately. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because I'm your assistant. Because he's my boss. Because this is—" She struggled for words. "Insane." "It's practical," Margaret corrected. "The gala is full of vultures. Women who see Ethan as a prize to be won. Men who see him as competition. If he shows up alone, he'll spend the entire night fending off advances. If he shows up with you, people will leave him alone. So I'm a shield. You're a colleague, a friend of the family, someone trustworthy." Margaret's gaze was sharp. "Unless you can't handle it." It was a challenge. Lena recognized the shape of it. "What does Ethan think about this?" "He doesn't know yet. I'm telling him this afternoon." Margaret smiled, thin and dangerous. "But he'll agree. He always does when I'm right." Ethan agreed. Lena found out when he called her that evening, voice tight with resignation. "I apologize in advance," he said. "For what?" "For whatever my mother said to convince you this was a good idea." "She didn't convince me. She just made it clear I didn't have a choice. He laughed, short, surprised. Yeah, that's her specialty. So we're doing this. Apparently, a pause. I'll send a car to pick you up at 6. The gala starts at 7. What should I wear? Something you're comfortable in. It's formal, but he trailed off. Just be yourself. That's more than most people there can manage. The line went dead. Lena stood in her apartment staring at her closet and tried not to panic. She didn't own anything even remotely appropriate for a Billionaire's charity gala. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dress will be delivered tomorrow. Don't argue. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to throw her phone across the room and scream about boundaries and pride and the fact that she was being dressed like a doll for a game she didn't understand. But she didn't. Because the truth was, she needed this, needed the job, the paycheck, the stability. And if that meant playing pretend for one night, she'd do it. The dress arrived the next morning in a box that probably cost more than her rent. Black, elegant, simpler than she'd expected. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Saturday night, the car arrived at 6 sharp. Lena climbed in, heart hammering, and tried to remember how to breathe. Ethan was already inside. He looked at her, and something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or appreciation. You look... He stopped, started again. You look nice. Thanks. Your mother has good taste. She does. He was quiet for a moment. Are you ready for this? No. Good. Neither am I. The gala was everything Lena had feared and nothing she'd expected. The hotel ballroom dripped with wealth, chandeliers, champagne, women in gowns that cost more than cars. Ethan kept a hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd, and she tried to ignore the way her skin buzzed under his touch. People stared, whispered. A few approached, and Ethan introduced her the same way every time. This is Lena Hart. She works with my mother. Not for, with. It was a small distinction, but it mattered. Margaret held court near the bar, surrounded by admirers, and when she caught sight of them, her smile was pure satisfaction. You two look perfect together, she said loud enough for others to hear. Ethan's jaw tightened. Mother. What? I'm just stating facts. The night blurred. Lena smiled, made small talk, and pretended she belonged. Ethan stayed close, a solid presence at her side. And she started to understand why Margaret had orchestrated this. It wasn't about shielding Ethan from attention. It was about reminding him what it felt like to have someone next to him. Near the end of the night, they ended up on the balcony, alone. The city glittered below, and the noise of the gala faded to a distant hum. Thank you, Ethan said, for tonight. I didn't do anything. You showed up. That's more than most people manage. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the skyline. My mother's meddling. You know that. I figured. She thinks I need fixing. Do you? He glanced over, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression. I don't know. Maybe. Lena wanted to say something wise, something comforting. But all she had was honesty. I think you're doing the best you can, and I think that's enough. Ethan looked at her like she'd just handed him something fragile. You really believe that? Yeah, I do. The moment stretched, delicate and strange, and then someone called his name from inside. The spell broke. They went back to the gala. But something had shifted, and Lena knew this job, this family, this man was going to change her in ways she couldn't predict yet. She just hoped she'd survive it. The morning after the gala, Lena woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 were from numbers she didn't recognize. 3 were from Margaret. 2 were from Ethan. She sat up in bed, head pounding from champagne she'd barely touched, and listened to the voicemails with growing dread. The first was a reporter asking for comment on her relationship with Ethan Cole. The second was another reporter, more aggressive. The third was Margaret, her voice clipped and furious. We need to talk. Come to my penthouse, now. Lena threw on clothes and made it across town in 40 minutes, her stomach churning. The doorman looked at her differently this morning, recognition mixed with something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or pity. Margaret was waiting in the sitting room with a tablet in her lap and an expression that could cut glass. Sit. Lena sat. Margaret turned the tablet around. The headline made her stomach drop. Billionaire Ethan Cole's mystery woman. Who is Lena Hart? Below it, a photo from last night. Ethan's hand on her back, both of them caught mid-laugh at something Margaret had said. They looked close, comfortable, like they belonged together. There are 6 more articles just like it, Margaret said, plus speculation on every gossip site between here and Los Angeles. Apparently you're either a gold digger, a hired escort, or my son's secret girlfriend of 2 years. I'm none of those things. I know that. The internet doesn't. Margaret set the tablet aside. This is my fault. I should have anticipated the attention. I didn't think they'd latch on this quickly. What do we do? We? Margaret's eyebrow arched. You want to help clean this up? I caused it, or helped cause it, anyway. No, I caused it by pushing you two together. You just showed up and did your job. Margaret sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 73 years. Ethan's dealing with his publicist now. They'll release a statement saying you're a family friend. The attention will die down in a few days. And if it doesn't, then we adapt. Margaret's gaze sharpened. But I need to know, can you handle this? The scrutiny, the rumors, the cameras that might follow you for a while? Lena thought about the eviction notice she'd narrowly avoided, about the paycheck that had cleared 3 days ago, about Noah's grin when she'd taught him about Stegosaurus plates. I can handle it. Good, because it's about to get worse. Before Lena could ask what that meant, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked like he hadn't slept, tie loosened, hair disheveled, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. We need to talk, he said, looking at Lena. Margaret stood. I'll give you privacy. Stay. Ethan's voice was firm. This involves you too. He sat across from Lena, and she saw something in his expression that scared her. Not anger, resignation. The statement won't be enough, he said. My publicist thinks the story has legs, especially because... He paused, jaw tight. My father's involved. Margaret went very still. Richard? He gave an interview this morning, said he's delighted I'm finally moving on, that Lena seems like a lovely young woman, and he looks forward to meeting her. Ethan's laugh was bitter. He's positioning himself as the supportive father, which means he's angling for something. What does he want? Lena asked. Control, money, relevance. Ethan rubbed his face. He lost most of his stake in Apex when he and my mother divorced. He's been trying to claw his way back ever since. Margaret's expression was ice. And now he thinks he can use her, as leverage. Exactly. Lena's brain struggled to catch up. I don't understand. How does a fake relationship help him? Because it makes me look unstable, Ethan said. Emotional, distracted. If he can convince the board that I'm making personal decisions that affect the company, he can push for a vote of no confidence. That's insane. That's corporate politics. He met her eyes. I'm sorry. You didn't sign up for this. Neither did you. I was born into it. You weren't. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I can make this go away, pay you out for the next 6 months, help you find another position somewhere else. You'd be free of all of this. It was a generous offer. A kind one. Lena hated it. No. Ethan blinked. No? I'm not running because your father's an asshole. She looked at Margaret. Unless you want me gone? Absolutely not. You're the best assistant I've had in years. Then I'm staying. Lena crossed her arms. But I need to understand what we're actually dealing with. Who is Richard Cole, and why does he scare you? Ethan and Margaret exchanged a glance. Some silent conversation passed between them, and Margaret nodded slightly. My father, Ethan said slowly, is a man who believes love is a weakness and loyalty is a transaction. He married my mother for her family's connections, not because he cared about her. When she finally left him, he tried to destroy her. He failed, but not for lack of trying. And Noah? Something dangerous flickered across Ethan's face. He's never met Noah, and he never will. Why? Because I don't let predators near my son. The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of an absolute truth. Lena understood then. This wasn't just about business. This was about protection, about keeping the people Ethan loved safe from someone who would use them as weapons. Okay, she said, So what's the play? Margaret smiled, sharp and approving. We turn it around, make Richard's meddling work against him. How? By leaning into the narrative. Margaret looked at Ethan. If they think you're in a relationship, we make it real. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped. Absolutely not. Hear me out. No, I'm not dragging Lena into a fake relationship just to spite my father. It wouldn't be fake, Margaret said calmly. It would be a contract, a business arrangement. Lena becomes your fiancée for 6 months, long enough to stabilize the board, prove you're not making impulsive decisions, and cut Richard off at the knees. After that, you part ways amicably. That's insane. That's strategy. Margaret turned to Lena. You'd be compensated, of course, handsomely. And at the end, you'd have connections, experience, and a resume that could open any door you want. Lena's head spun. You want me to fake marry your son? I want you to help my family survive a man who's been trying to destroy us for 15 years. Margaret's voice softened. I wouldn't ask if I had another choice. But Richard's already moving. He has allies on the board. And if Ethan looks vulnerable, they'll strike. This is manipulation, Ethan said. Yes. And it's necessary. Margaret stood leaning on her cane. I'm not asking you to fall in love. I'm asking you to play a role. Both of you. Can you do that? Ethan looked at Lena, and she saw the apology in his eyes before he spoke. You don't have to agree to this. What happens if I don't? Richard wins. The board votes me out. Apex gets carved up and sold for parts. His voice was flat. And my father gets exactly what he wants. And Noah? Noah would be fine. I'd make sure of it. But Lena heard what he wasn't saying, that losing the company would mean losing the shield that kept Noah safe, that Richard would circle back eventually, looking for weaknesses. She thought about the little boy who'd made her promise to learn about dinosaurs, about Margaret, who'd given her a chance when no one else would, about Ethan, standing there looking like he was asking her to jump off a cliff with him. How much? She asked. Margaret named a figure that made Lena's vision blur. That's non-negotiable. You'd be taking on significant risk. You deserve to be compensated for it. Lena looked at Ethan. What do you want? I want you to walk away from this mess and have a normal life. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I want my son to be safe. I want my mother to stop worrying. He stopped, shook his head. Doesn't matter what I want. It matters to me. Something passed between them then, fragile and strange. Lena felt the weight of it settle in her chest. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Ethan closed his eyes. Lena, on one condition, we're honest with each other. No games, no lies. If this is going to work, I need to know I can trust you. You can. Prove it. He opened his eyes, and she saw the exhaustion there, the fear, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't blow up in all their faces. What do you want to know? Why you really agreed to this? Not the board, not your father. The real reason. Ethan glanced at his mother, who nodded and quietly left the room. When they were alone, he sat back down, suddenly looking smaller. 5 years ago, my wife died in a car accident. I was driving. We were arguing about something stupid. I don't even remember what. I looked away from the road for 2 seconds. That's all it took. His voice was hollow. Noah was in the back seat. He survived without a scratch. She didn't. Lena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. It doesn't change anything. He looked at his hands. After that, I promised myself I'd never let emotion cloud my judgment again. I built walls, did what needed to be done, kept Noah safe, and kept the company running. It worked. Until now. Until now. He met her eyes. My mother thinks those walls are killing me. That I'm so focused on control, I've forgotten how to live. Maybe she's right. Maybe I need someone to remind me. Or maybe, he smiled without humor, maybe I'm just too tired to fight her anymore. Lena understood then. This wasn't about business. It was about survival. About a man who'd been drowning for 5 years and finally admitted he needed help. Okay, she said quietly. Then let's do this. But we do it right. No half measures. Agreed. They shook hands, and Lena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She'd just agreed to marry a billionaire she barely knew, for reasons that made sense and didn't, all at once. Margaret returned with a lawyer in tow. The contract was drawn up that afternoon. Lena read every word, asked a dozen questions, and signed her name at the bottom with a hand that only shook a little. The engagement would last 6 months. She'd live in Ethan's penthouse, attend events as his fiancée, and play the role convincingly. In return, she'd receive the agreed-upon sum, plus expenses, plus a guarantee of employment afterward if she wanted it. At the end of 6 months, they'd stage a quiet breakup. No drama, no scandal. Just two people who realized they weren't compatible. It was clean, professional, completely insane. The announcement went out that evening. A single photo, Lena and Ethan at the gala, looking happy, with a caption that read, "We're thrilled to share that we're engaged. Thank you for your support and privacy during this special time." The internet exploded. Lena's phone became unusable within an hour. Margaret hired a security detail. Ethan's publicist issued a follow-up statement asking for respect. And through it all, Lena sat in her apartment, staring at the ring Ethan had given her, a simple platinum band with a diamond that probably cost more than a car, and wondered what the hell she'd just done. Her phone rang. Ethan's number. "Hey, are you okay?" He sounded worried. "I'm sitting in my apartment wearing a ring worth more than my life, engaged to a man I've known for 6 weeks. I'm fantastic." He laughed, surprised. "Fair point. Is this real? Any of it?" "The contract's real. The money's real. The rest—" He paused. "We'll figure out as we go." Comforting. I'm not good at comforting, but I'm good at keeping my word. "You'll be safe, Lena. I promise." She wanted to believe him. "When do I move in?" "This weekend. My mother's already coordinating with movers." "Of course she is. She's efficient. She's terrifying." "That too." His voice softened. "Thank you for doing this. Ask me again in 6 months if I still think it was a good idea." "Deal." They hung up, and Lena looked around her tiny apartment, the place she'd fought so hard to keep that now felt like a cage she was being released from. She should have been relieved, excited. Instead, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and dark, with no idea how deep it went. The movers came on Saturday. Lena packed her life into the same 4 boxes she'd been ready to load into Mrs. Chen's car, and watched strangers carry them out to a truck that would deliver them to a penthouse she'd visited exactly twice. Mrs. Chen caught her in the hallway. "You're really leaving?" "Yeah. That thing on the internet with the billionaire, that's real?" Lena held up her left hand. The ring caught the light. Mrs. Chen's eyes went wide. "Holy shit. Yeah. Are you happy?" It was such a simple question. Lena didn't have a simple answer. "I'm trying to be." Mrs. Chen hugged her, quick and fierce. "You deserve good things. Don't let anyone make you forget that." Lena held on tighter than she meant to. "Thanks." The penthouse felt different when she arrived with her belongings. Less like a museum, more like a place she was expected to inhabit. Ethan met her at the door, Noah bouncing beside him. "Lena, you're moving in." "I am." "Does that mean you're staying forever?" Ethan's expression flickered. "For a while, buddy." "Cool. I can show you my room now, and my Lego city, and my dinosaur book that has actual facts, not the baby ones." Lena let herself be dragged down the hallway, glancing back to see Ethan watching them with something unreadable on his face. Her room was at the end of the hall, spacious, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was 3 times the size of her old apartment. "This is too much," she said when Ethan appeared in the doorway. "It's what we had available." "Ethan." He leaned against the frame. "We need to make this look real. That means you can't be sleeping in a closet." "I wasn't going to suggest a closet, just something smaller." "Get used to it. My mother's already planning an engagement party. There will be photographers, questions, scrutiny. We need to sell this." "Right, selling it." Lena set down the box she was holding. "How do we do that without lying to Noah?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "We don't lie. We just don't explain everything. He's 5, not stupid." "I know." He scrubbed a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about that. We tell him you're staying here to help out, to spend time with the family. He doesn't need to know about contracts or fake engagements. And when it ends, we'll handle it then. but he didn't sound convinced. Lena unpacked slowly, hyper-aware of Ethan's presence in the doorway. He didn't leave, just watched her move around the room like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "What?" she finally asked. "You're different here." "Different how?" "Less guarded. More—" he searched for the word. "Present." "That's because I'm not performing for anyone. Except you are. You've been performing since the moment my mother hired you." Lena stopped, a stack of books in her hands. "What's your point?" "I don't have one. Just an observation." He pushed off the doorframe. "Dinner's at 6. Noah insists we have pizza because it's a special occasion. And what are we celebrating?" "You, apparently. He's convinced you moving in is the best thing that's ever happened to this apartment." "He's easy to please." "He likes you. That's not easy." Ethan's gaze held hers. "People don't usually get past his walls that fast." "Maybe he doesn't have as many walls as you think." "Maybe." He left, and Lena sat on the bed, massive, expensive, utterly surreal, and tried to remember how she'd gotten here. A broken sidewalk grate, an old woman's twisted ankle, a job offer that turned into something else entirely. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Noah talked non-stop, Ethan occasionally interjected with corrections, and Lena found herself laughing more than she had in months. It felt normal, domestic, dangerous. After Noah went to bed, Lena and Ethan ended up in the living room with glasses of wine neither of them was really drinking. "Your mother called," Ethan said. "The engagement party's in 2 weeks." "Of course it is." "She's invited 200 people." Lena choked on her wine. 200? "She doesn't do anything small." He swirled his glass, watching the liquid catch the light. "There's something else. My father wants to meet you." "Absolutely not." I told him the same thing. He's insisting. "Let him insist. I didn't sign up to meet the man who's trying to destroy your family." "Technically, you signed up for exactly that. It's in the contract. Public appearances include family events." "He's not family. He's a threat." "He's both." Ethan set down his glass. "I can refuse him, but it'll look suspicious. Like we're hiding something." "We are hiding something." "Fair point." He almost smiled. "What if we control the meeting? Dinner at a restaurant, public enough that he can't make a scene. My mother can be there. You'd be safe." "I don't need you to keep me safe from a dinner conversation." "Yes, you do. You don't know what he's capable of." The intensity in his voice made her pause. "What did he do to you?" Ethan was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "When my mother left him, I was 12. He told me I had to choose, stay with him or go with her. I chose her. He said that was fine, but if I ever needed anything from him, money, support, anything, I'd have to earn it, prove I was worth his time." "That's abuse. That's Richard Cole." He looked at her. "I spent years trying to earn his approval, built the company bigger, better, more profitable. It was never enough. When Sarah died, he didn't call, didn't visit, just sent a card that said, 'Condolences on your loss.' Like she was a business deal that fell through." Lena's chest ached. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm telling you so you understand what we're dealing with. He'll be charming, warm. He'll ask about your family, your background, your intentions, and the whole time he'll be looking for weaknesses." "Then I won't give him any." Ethan studied her and something shifted in his expression. "You really think you can handle him?" "I've handled worse." "Have you?" "I survived being broke in New York. I survived your mother's interview process. I can survive one dinner with your asshole father." This time Ethan's smile was real. "All right, we'll do it, but on our terms." They set the dinner for the following week. A upscale restaurant, early evening, Margaret as their buffer. Lena spent the days leading up to it working with Margaret and trying not to think about how her life had turned into a corporate thriller. The night before the dinner, Noah asked her to read him a bedtime story. Ethan hovered in the doorway, watching as Lena settled on the edge of Noah's bed with a book about a T-Rex who was afraid of the dark. "Do you think T-Rexes were really scared of stuff?" Noah asked. "Probably everyone's scared of something." "Even Dad?" Lena glanced at the doorway. Ethan had gone still. "Even your dad? What's he scared of?" "You'd have to ask him." Noah rolled over to look at Ethan. "Dad, what are you scared of?" Ethan came into the room, sat on the other side of the bed. Losing you, that's my biggest fear. You won't lose me. I'm right here. I know, buddy. He ruffled Noah's hair. But sometimes grown-ups worry anyway. That's silly. Yeah, it is. Lena finished the story, and Noah's eyes drifted closed before the last page. She set the book aside and stood, careful not to wake him. Ethan followed her out, pulling the door mostly shut. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For being honest with him, about fear. Most people try to pretend they don't have any. Most people are lying. True. He walked with her down the hallway. Are you scared? About tomorrow? Terrified. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. He stopped outside her door. If at any point you want to leave, if he says something that crosses a line, we go. No questions asked. Okay. I mean it, Lena. Your safety matters more than this charade. She wanted to argue, to tell him she could handle herself, but the way he was looking at her, fierce, protective, almost desperate, made her pause. Okay, she said again, softer. He nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here, even with all the insanity. Yeah? Yeah. This place feels less empty. He walked away before she could respond, leaving Lena standing in the hallway with a warmth blooming in her chest that felt nothing like a business arrangement. She was in trouble. The dinner was at a French restaurant so expensive it didn't have prices on the menu. Lena wore a dress Margaret had sent over, navy blue, elegant without being showy, and tried to calm her racing heart. Richard Cole was already seated when they arrived. He stood as they approached, and Lena's first thought was that he looked like an older, colder version of Ethan. Same sharp features, same commanding presence. But where Ethan's eyes held warmth when he looked at Noah, Richard's held calculation. Ethan, Margaret. He nodded to each of them, then turned to Lena with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And you must be the famous Lena Hart. Mr. Cole, she shook his hand. His grip was firm, assessing. Please, call me Richard. We're family now, after all. They sat. Richard ordered wine without asking anyone's preference, launched into small talk about the restaurant, the weather, the traffic. He was smooth, practiced, and Lena could feel him watching her even when he wasn't looking directly at her. So Lena, he said after the appetizers arrived, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? Philadelphia, South Side. And your family? Working class? My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked retail. Was? My dad passed away 3 years ago. Heart attack. I'm sorry to hear that. He sounded sincere. It was probably a lie. And you came to New York for work? For opportunity. How entrepreneurial. He cut his steak with surgical precision. It's remarkable, really. A girl from South Philly, now engaged to one of the most successful men in Manhattan. Quite the fairy tale. Ethan's hand found hers under the table. A warning or a comfort, she couldn't tell. I don't believe in fairy tales, Lena said evenly. I believe in showing up and doing the work. Clearly, Richard's smile sharpened, though I imagine working for Margaret helped smooth the path. Are you suggesting I didn't earn my position? I'm suggesting that sometimes opportunity comes from knowing the right people. There's no shame in that. Margaret set down her fork with a deliberate clink. Richard, if you have something to say it directly. I'm simply getting to know my future daughter-in-law. Surely that's allowed. Getting to know, or interrogating. Ethan's voice was ice. There's a difference? The table went silent. Lena felt the tension coil tighter, saw Ethan's jaw clench. This was the moment. Either she backed down and proved Richard right, or she stood her ground. She chose the latter. You want to know if I'm using your son, she said calmly. The answer's no. You want to know if this engagement is real. That's between Ethan and me. You want to find a weakness you can exploit. Good luck? Richard's eyebrows rose. Direct. I appreciate that. I doubt you appreciate anything that doesn't serve you. For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across his face. Then he laughed. Short, sharp. She's got teeth. I like that. I'm so glad I have your approval, Lena said flatly. Margaret looked like she was trying not to smile. Ethan's hand tightened around hers. The rest of the dinner passed in careful neutrality. Richard probed, Lena deflected, and by the time dessert arrived, she felt like she'd run a marathon. But she hadn't broken, hadn't given him anything he could use. In the car afterward, Margaret patted her hand. Well done. I wanted to throw wine in his face. I could tell. The fact that you didn't shows remarkable restraint. Ethan was quiet until they dropped Margaret off. Then, alone in the back seat, he turned to Lena. You were incredible. I was angry. You were strong. There's a difference. He looked at her like he was seeing something new. I meant what I said. I'm glad you're here. Lena's heart did something complicated in her chest. Ethan, I know, it's just a contract, but tonight felt real. It felt like a battlefield. Same thing. In my family. He smiled, tired and genuine. Thank you for not running. The night's not over yet. But she didn't run. She went back to the penthouse, said goodnight to Ethan in the hallway, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing that somewhere between a broken sidewalk and a French restaurant, she'd stopped pretending this was just about survival. She was starting to care. And that was more dangerous than any contract she could have signed. The engagement party arrived like a storm Lena couldn't outrun. 200 people crammed into a ballroom that somehow still felt too big, all of them watching her like she was an exhibit they'd paid admission to see. Margaret had insisted on a receiving line, which meant Lena spent the first hour shaking hands with strangers who smiled too wide and asked questions that felt like traps. How did you two meet? A woman in diamonds that could fund a small country leaned in close, her perfume suffocating. Through his mother, Lena said, which was technically true. How romantic. The woman's eyes said she didn't believe a word of it. Ethan appeared at her elbow, his hand settling at the small of her back. The touch was practiced now, familiar. They'd spent the last 2 weeks rehearsing this, how to stand together, how to look at each other, how to sell a lie without speaking it out loud. Mrs. Vanderbilt, he said smoothly. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it. Your father speaks so highly of Lena. Ethan's fingers pressed harder against her spine. Does he? Oh, yes. He was just telling everyone how delighted he is that you found someone so grounded. The word landed like an insult wrapped in velvet. Lena felt Ethan tense beside her. I'm lucky, Lena said before he could respond. Ethan's taught me that being grounded is just another word for knowing where you came from. Mrs. Vanderbilt's smile faltered. How lovely. She moved on, and Ethan leaned down, his breath warm against Lena's ear. You're good at this. At lying? At surviving. The night blurred into a series of conversations that all felt the same. People congratulated them with voices that dripped skepticism. They asked about wedding dates and honeymoon plans and whether Lena was adjusting to her new life. Each question felt designed to make her stumble, to prove she didn't belong. She didn't give them the satisfaction, but 3 hours in, her face hurt from smiling, and her feet screamed in heels Margaret had insisted were necessary. She excused herself to the bathroom, needing 5 minutes away from the performance. The women's lounge was empty, thank God. Lena locked herself in a stall and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door, trying to remember how to breathe. The door to the lounge opened. Voices filtered in. Hi, feminine, familiar from the receiving line. Did you see that dress? I mean, it's nice, but it's obviously borrowed. Margaret's doing, I'm sure. The poor girl wouldn't know couture if it bit her. Lena went very still. I give it 6 months, another voice chimed in. He'll get bored once the novelty wears off. If it even lasts that long. Richard told me the whole thing reeks of desperation. Apparently she was unemployed when Margaret found her. Like a stray. They laughed. Lena's hands curled into fists. I almost feel bad for her. She probably thinks this is real. Please, men like Ethan Cole don't marry women like her. They hire them. The voices faded as they left. Lena stayed frozen in the stall, their words echoing in her head. She'd known people were talking, known they'd judge her, but hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a way that hurt more than she wanted to admit. She emerged from the stall, fixed her makeup in the mirror, and went back to the party with her smile firmly in place. Ethan found her near the bar. You okay? Perfect. He studied her face. You're lying. So are you. That's the whole point of tonight. Before he could respond, Margaret appeared with a woman Lena didn't recognize. She was younger than most of the guests, maybe 35, with the kind of beauty that came from expensive maintenance and good genes. Her dress probably cost more than Lena's first car. "Ethan, darling," the woman said, her voice honey smooth, "it's been too long." "Victoria." Ethan's tone was carefully neutral. "I didn't know you were in town. I wouldn't miss your engagement party. We're old friends, after all." She turned to Lena, extending a hand. "Victoria Ashford, Ethan and I go way back." The way she said it made Lena's instincts flare. "Lena Hart, nice to meet you." "The fiancé, how exciting." Victoria's smile was all teeth. "You must tell me everything. How did he propose? Was it romantic?" Lena felt Ethan shift beside her. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't planned for someone asking about a proposal that never happened. "It was private," Lena said carefully. "Oh, come on, you can give us a little detail." Victoria leaned in conspiratorially. "Ethan was never one for grand gestures. I remember when we were together, I had to practically drag romance out of him." There it was. The hook, set, and waiting. "We weren't together," Ethan said flatly. "We dated for 3 months, 5 years ago. 6 months. But who's counting?" Victoria's laugh was light, dismissive. "Still, I know how he is. All business, no poetry. I'm just curious how he managed to sweep you off your feet." Lena felt the trap closing. Whatever she said, Victoria would find a way to twist it. "He listened," Lena said quietly. That was enough. Victoria's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "How simple." "Simple works for us," Ethan said, his hand finding Lena's. "If you'll excuse us, we should make the rounds." He steered Lena away before Victoria could respond. Once they were out of earshot, he muttered, "I'm sorry about that." "Who is she really?" "Someone my father invited, probably to make exactly that scene." "Were you actually together?" "Briefly, years ago. It ended badly." He looked at her. "She's not important." "She seems to think she is." "She's wrong." They didn't have time to discuss it further. The rest of the night passed in a blur of faces and false smiles. By the time the last guest left, Lena felt hollowed out, scraped clean by hours of performance. Margaret found them in the emptying ballroom. "You both did well." "Did we?" Lena's voice came out sharper than intended. "You survived. That's what matters." Margaret's gaze was shrewd. "Richard tried to undermine you at every turn. You didn't give him an opening. He invited Victoria," Ethan said. "I know. I had her seated as far from you as possible." Margaret sighed. "He's escalating, which means we need to as well." "What does that mean?" Lena asked. "It means the board meeting is in 3 days. Richard's going to make his move, and we need to make sure you're visible, valuable, and completely integrated into this family before he does." "How?" Margaret smiled, thin and sharp. "You're going to start working at Apex? Officially?" Lena's stomach dropped. "What?" "As my liaison to the executive team. You'll attend meetings, take notes, provide insights. Show the board that you're not just Ethan's pretty distraction. You're an asset." "I'm not qualified for that." "You're more qualified than half the people in that building. You just don't know it yet." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "I wouldn't throw you to the wolves unprepared, Lena, but I need you to trust me." Lena looked at Ethan. "What do you think?" "I think my mother's right. Richard's going to paint you as a liability. We need to prove you're the opposite. And if I fail, then we adapt." He met her eyes. "But you won't fail." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she was capable of walking into a boardroom full of sharks and coming out intact. "Okay," she said, "I'll do it." Monday morning, Lena walked into Apex Holdings with a new title and a stomach full of dread. Margaret had arranged everything: an office, a schedule, an assistant who looked at Lena like she was an alien species. "Ms. Hart," the assistant said, her voice professionally cold. "Your first meeting is at 9, conference room B." Lena checked her watch. 8:47. 13 minutes to prepare for something she had no idea how to handle. The conference room was already full when she arrived. 8 people, all older than her, all watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his face carefully blank. "Ms. Hart," he said formally, "thank you for joining us." She took the empty seat near the middle, feeling every eye track her movement. The meeting was about quarterly projections, numbers and strategy and decisions that would affect hundreds of employees. Lena listened, took notes, tried to follow the rapid-fire discussion. Most of it went over her head, but she caught enough to understand the basic tension. Revenue was down in 2 divisions, and people were arguing about where to cut costs. "We should reduce staffing and marketing," someone suggested. "The ROI isn't there." "Marketing is what drives sales," another voice countered. "Cut there and you're killing future growth." "Then where do we cut?" The argument circled, getting nowhere. Lena watched Ethan's expression grow tighter with each repetition. Without thinking, she spoke. "What if you don't cut?" The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Excuse me?" The man who'd suggested cutting marketing looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Lena's heart hammered, but she pushed forward. "The revenue drop. Where's it coming from specifically? Does it matter?" "It might. If it's isolated to specific products or regions, cutting across the board punishes departments that are performing well." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Show me the breakdown by region." Someone pulled up a spreadsheet. The numbers told a story. 2 regions were bleeding money, the rest were stable or growing. "So the problem isn't company-wide," Lena said. "It's localized, which means the solution should be too." "And what do you suggest?" The question came from a woman at the far end of the table, her tone skeptical. "I don't know your business well enough to suggest specifics, but cutting good performers to compensate for bad ones seems like punishing success." The woman's expression shifted slightly. Not agreement, but consideration. Ethan picked up the thread. "Lena's right. We need targeted solutions, not blanket cuts. James, I want a detailed analysis of those 2 regions by Wednesday. Find out what's failing and why." The meeting moved on, but Lena felt the shift. She'd spoken up and hadn't been immediately shot down. It was small, but it felt like progress. Afterward, Ethan caught her in the hallway. "That was good. That was terrifying. Welcome to corporate strategy." He almost smiled. "You saw something no one else did. That's valuable." "I got lucky." "No, you paid attention." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "The board meeting is Wednesday. Richard's going to try to paint me as unstable, too focused on personal matters to run the company effectively. What you did in there helps counter that narrative." "Because I made one decent observation?" "Because you proved you're engaged with the business, that you're not just decoration." His gaze held hers. "Keep doing that." She wanted to ask what happened if she couldn't, if she ran out of luck or insight or whatever had carried her through that meeting. But someone called Ethan's name and he was pulled away, leaving Lena standing in the hallway, feeling like she'd just survived the first round of a fight she didn't know how to win. The next 2 days were brutal. Lena attended meeting after meeting, absorbing information faster than her brain could process it. She asked questions, took notes, and tried to ignore the whispers that followed her through the building. Tuesday afternoon, she was reviewing documents in her office when someone knocked. A woman in her 40s stepped inside without waiting for invitation. "Ms. Hart, I'm Jennifer Mills, head of operations." Lena stood, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you." Jennifer didn't shake it. "I'll be direct. Half the executive team thinks you're a corporate spy. The other half thinks you're sleeping your way to the top. I'm here to find out which one you are." Lena's hand dropped. "Neither." "Then what are you doing here?" "My job. Your job is to marry the CEO and look pretty at parties. This," Jennifer gestured around the office, "this is something else. Margaret asked me to help." "Why?" It was a fair question. Lena considered lying, spinning some story about wanting to contribute, but she was tired of lies. "Because Richard Cole is trying to destroy this company, and she thinks I can help stop him." Jennifer's expression didn't change. "How?" "By proving I'm not a distraction, by showing the board that Ethan's personal life doesn't interfere with his ability to lead." "And you think attending a few meetings accomplishes that?" "I think it's better than sitting at home and proving Richard right." For a long moment, Jennifer just looked at her. Then she sat down in the chair across from Lena's desk. "All right, I'll bite. You want to be useful? Actually useful?" "Yes." "There's a discrepancy in the regional reports. Small. Most people wouldn't notice. But the numbers don't add up." Jennifer pulled out her phone, showed Lena a spreadsheet. Someone's either incompetent or covering something up. Find out which. Lena stared at the numbers. Why are you giving this to me? Because if you're actually trying to help, this is how you do it. And if you're a fraud, you'll bury yourself trying. Jennifer stood. You have until the board meeting. Good luck. She left and Lena sat staring at the spreadsheet, her heart racing. This was a test, maybe even a trap. But it was also an opportunity to prove she belonged here. She got to work. The discrepancy was subtle. Expenses in the underperforming regions were reported slightly higher than invoices supported. Not enough to trigger automatic audits, but enough to matter when multiplied across months. Lena spent hours cross-referencing documents, building a timeline. By midnight Tuesday, she had a theory. Someone was padding expenses to hide declining sales numbers, making the problems look like cost overruns instead of revenue failures. Wednesday morning, she walked into the board meeting with a folder full of evidence and a stomach full of acid. The boardroom was intimidating, dark wood, leather chairs, a table that could seat 20. Richard Cole sat near the middle, looking supremely confident. Margaret was at the far end. Ethan presided at the head. Lena took a seat along the wall, technically present, but not part of the discussion. She was there to observe, Margaret had said, to be visible. The meeting started with standard business. Then Richard cleared his throat. Before we move on, I'd like to address a concern several board members have raised. Here it comes, Lena thought. There's been talk, speculation really, about whether personal matters are affecting leadership decisions. I think we need to discuss it openly. Ethan's expression didn't change. What personal matters? Your engagement. Your sudden decision to bring your fiancé into the company. Some members feel it shows divided attention. My engagement has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. Doesn't it? Richard leaned back, fingers steepled. You've been distracted, missed meetings, delegated decisions you'd normally handle yourself. I've missed one meeting in 6 months due to a family emergency, and delegation is called effective management, or it's called losing focus. Richard's smile was sympathetic, poisonous. No one's questioning your commitment, Ethan. We're simply concerned that you're trying to balance too much. Margaret spoke up. What exactly are you proposing, Richard? A temporary step back. Let Ethan focus on his personal life. We can install interim leadership until— No! Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. This company doesn't need interim leadership. It needs focus on actual problems, not manufactured drama. What problems? Someone asked. Lena stood before she could think better of it. Every head turned toward her. The regional revenue discrepancies, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Someone's been manipulating expense reports to hide sales failures. Richard's expression flickered. I'm sorry, who are you to make that accusation? Someone who spent the last 2 days reviewing financial reports. Lena moved to the table, set down her folder. The numbers don't lie. Expenses in Regions 3 and 7 are inflated by approximately 8%, just enough to mask declining revenue without triggering audits. Jennifer Mills picked up the folder, started flipping through it. Her eyebrows rose. This is detailed work, she said quietly. It's also serious, Margaret added. If true, someone's been committing fraud. Richard laughed. This is ridiculous. You're going to derail a board meeting based on the amateur detective work of someone who's been with the company for a week? I'm going to investigate credible evidence, Ethan said. Jennifer, can you verify this? Jennifer was already on her phone. Give me an hour. The meeting paused. Tension coiled through the room like smoke. Lena sat back down, feeling Richard's eyes on her like lasers. 45 minutes later, Jennifer returned. She's right. The discrepancies are real, and they trace back to one source, the regional director for Territory 7, who, coincidentally, reports directly to you, Richard. The room exploded into murmurs. Richard's face went carefully blank. I had no knowledge of this. Your director. Your responsibility, Ethan said flatly. This is exactly the kind of problem we should be focused on, not my personal life. You can't possibly think I was involved. I think you were either negligent or complicit. Either way, it undermines your credibility to question my leadership. Ethan looked around the table. Anyone else want to discuss my divided attention? Or can we focus on actual business? Silence. The meeting continued, but the power had shifted. Richard tried to recover, but every word sounded defensive. By the time they adjourned, he'd lost the room. In the hallway afterward, Margaret caught Lena's arm. Well done. I thought I was just supposed to observe. You were. Until you saw an opportunity to prove your worth. Margaret's smile was fierce with approval. You may have just saved this company. I just read some spreadsheets. You saw what no one else bothered to look for. That's not luck, Lena. That's skill. Ethan appeared, his expression unreadable. My office. Now. Lena's stomach dropped. She followed him to the executive floor into his office with its wall of windows and its air of controlled power. He closed the door, turned to face her. That was reckless. I had evidence. You had a theory and 2 days of research. You stood up in a board meeting and accused a director of fraud without knowing if you were right. But I was right. This time, he moved closer, and she saw the tension in his shoulders. Do you have any idea what would have happened if you were wrong? Richard would have torn you apart, used it to prove you're incompetent. I know. Then why did you do it? Why? Because you needed help. Because someone had to say something. She met his eyes. Because I'm tired of being decoration. Ethan stared at her, something fierce and complicated warring in his expression. Then he closed the distance between them and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, frustrated, full of weeks of tension that had nowhere else to go. Lena froze for half a second, then kissed him back just as hard, her hands fisting in his shirt. This wasn't part of the contract, wasn't part of the plan. It felt real. Ethan pulled back first, breathing hard. I'm sorry. That was... Don't apologize. Lena's heart was trying to break through her ribs. Unless you didn't mean it. I meant it. His hand was still on her waist, burning through fabric. I've been trying not to mean it for weeks. Why? Because this is complicated enough without adding actual feelings to it. Too late. He laughed, short and pained. Yeah, too late. They stood there, close enough to touch, neither of them moving. Lena's mind raced through implications, consequences, all the ways this could blow up in their faces. She didn't care. What do we do now? She asked. I don't know. Ethan's thumb traced small circles on her hip, probably without him realizing it. The contract says 6 months. After that, we walk away. Do you want to walk away? No. The word was quiet, honest. But I don't know if what I want matters. It matters to me. His expression cracked, showing the vulnerable thing underneath. You scare me, Lena. Good. You terrify me. This time when he kissed her, it was softer, careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he held on too tight. Someone knocked on the door. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. Come in, Ethan called, his voice only slightly unsteady. Jennifer Mills stepped inside, holding a tablet. We've got confirmation. The regional director confessed. He was padding expenses to cover embezzlement. Small amounts over time, figured no one would notice. She looked at Lena. You just saved the company $3 million. Lena's brain stalled. $3 million? At minimum. If this had continued another year, it could have been 10. Jennifer's expression was grudging respect. I owe you an apology. You're not a fraud. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Jennifer left, closing the door behind her. Lena looked at Ethan. He was smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. $3 million, he said. I was just trying not to screw up. You did more than that. You proved Richard wrong, proved everyone wrong. He shook his head, still smiling. I knew you were good. I didn't know you were this good. Neither did I. They were standing too close again. Lena made herself take a step back. We should talk about what just happened. The kiss or the corporate espionage? Both, either. I don't know. She ran a hand through her hair. This is getting complicated. It was always complicated. You know what I mean. Ethan's smile faded. Yeah, I do. He moved to the window looking out at the city. We have 4 months left on the contract. After that, we're supposed to stage a breakup and go our separate ways. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. He turned back to her. A month ago, this was simple. Solve a problem, protect my family, move on. Now, he stopped, searching for words. Now you're in my house, playing dinosaurs with my son, standing up in board meetings and saving my company. And I don't know how to separate the performance from what's real. Lena's chest ached. What if we didn't try? To separate it, I mean. Then we're risking everything. The contract, the plan, the protection it gives both of us. Or we're building something better. Or we're setting ourselves up for disaster. But he didn't sound convinced. Lena crossed to him, stopping close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just saying, what if we stop pretending the feelings aren't there? See where it goes? And if it falls apart, then at least we'll know we tried. Ethan looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he cupped her face in his hands, gentle and deliberate. You're going to wreck me, he said quietly. Good, you need wrecking. He kissed her again, slow and deep, and Lena felt the last of her defenses crumble. This was dangerous, reckless, completely insane. She'd never felt more sure of anything in her life. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. We have to be careful. If Richard finds out this is real, he'll use it against us. Then we keep playing the role, just with actual feelings underneath. That's not going to be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. He laughed softly. Fair point. They left the office separately. Lena first, Ethan 5 minutes later. Professional, distant, exactly like they were supposed to be. But when Lena got home that night, to the penthouse that was starting to feel less like a borrowed space and more like somewhere she belonged, Noah was waiting with a picture he'd drawn. Look, it's us. You and me and Dad. We're a family. Lena took the drawing, her throat tight. 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. Simple, perfect. It's beautiful, Noah. Can we put it on the fridge? Absolutely. Ethan appeared in his doorway, still in his suit from work. His eyes found Lena's across the room, and something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. They were in this now. Whatever it cost. That night, after Noah went to bed, Lena and Ethan sat on the couch with a bottle of wine neither of them drank. 4 months left, Ethan said. A lot can happen in 4 months. Or nothing can happen. We can stick to the plan. Lena looked at him. Do you want to stick to the plan? No. He said it without hesitation. But I don't want to hurt you either, and I'm good at hurting people I care about. You're talking about your wife. His expression shuddered. I'm talking about everyone I've ever let get close. I'm not fragile, Ethan. I won't break. Everyone breaks eventually. Then we'll break together. She took his hand, laced their fingers. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm just asking for real. He looked at their joined hands like they were something miraculous and terrifying. Okay. Okay? Let's see where this goes. No more pretending. He met her eyes. But if at any point you want out, if this gets too heavy or too complicated or just too much, you tell me. No guilt, no questions. Same goes for you. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss that felt nothing like a contract, and everything like a promise. And somewhere across the city, Richard Cole sat in his penthouse planning his next move, unaware that the weapon he'd tried to use against his son had just become the thing that made Ethan stronger. The next 3 weeks moved like a dream Lena kept expecting to wake up from. She and Ethan fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to normal. Mornings with Noah arguing about which dinosaur was the coolest. Evenings reviewing reports while Ethan cooked dinner with a competence that still surprised her. Nights where they talked until exhaustion pulled them under. They were careful in public, maintaining the polished fiction of an engagement built on romance rather than contracts. But in private, the walls came down piece by piece. It should have been perfect. It almost was. Then Victoria Ashford showed up at Apex Holdings with a visitor's badge and a smile that made Lena's instincts scream. Ms. Hart, she said, appearing in Lena's office doorway without knocking. Do you have a moment? Lena set down the report she'd been reviewing. I'm busy. This won't take long. Victoria sat anyway, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. I wanted to apologize for the engagement party. I came on a bit strong. A bit? It's just, Ethan and I have history. I'm sure he's told you. He mentioned you dated briefly years ago. 6 months, actually, but who's counting? Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. We were good together, really good, until his wife died and he shut everyone out. Lena kept her expression neutral. That must have been hard. It was, for both of us. Victoria leaned forward, conspiratorial. Can I be honest with you, woman to woman? I'd prefer you weren't. Victoria laughed like Lena had made a joke. I like you. You've got spine. But here's the thing. Ethan doesn't let people in. Not really. He'll let you get close enough to feel safe, and then one day you'll wake up and realize you're still outside the walls. Thanks for the advice I didn't ask for. I'm just trying to help. I know what it's like to care about him and have it not be enough. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. He's got this way of making you think you're special, that you're different from everyone else, until you're not. She left before Lena could respond, and the words sat heavy in the office like smoke. Lena tried to shake it off, tried to focus on work. But Victoria's voice kept echoing, you'll wake up and realize you're still outside the walls. That night, Ethan came home late from a client dinner. Lena was on the couch with her laptop reviewing the next quarter's marketing strategy. He kissed the top of her head in greeting, and she caught the faint smell of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. How was dinner? She asked, keeping her voice light. Long? Tedious? The client wanted to discuss every line item in the contract. He loosened his tie, heading for the kitchen. Did Noah give you trouble at bedtime? He tried to negotiate for 3 stories instead of 2. I held firm at 2.5. Ethan smiled. Diplomatic. He was halfway through making tea when Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her stomach drop. It was a photo. Ethan and Victoria at the restaurant, sitting close, Victoria's hand on his arm. The angle made it look intimate. Below it, a message. Thought you should know what your fiancé does when you're not around. Lena stared at the screen, her pulse hammering. Everything okay? Ethan asked from the kitchen. She locked her phone. Fine. But she wasn't fine. She was remembering every warning she'd heard, from the women in the bathroom at the engagement party, from Victoria herself. She was remembering that this had started as a contract, a performance, and maybe she'd been stupid to think it could be anything else. Ethan returned with 2 mugs of tea, set one in front of her. You sure you're all right? Was Victoria at your dinner tonight? His expression shifted, guarded. She was. The client brought her, apparently they're friends. I didn't know she'd be there. And you didn't think to mention it? I'm mentioning it now. He sat beside her, frowning. What's going on? Lena showed him the photo, watched his face go hard. Who sent this? I don't know. Anonymous number. This is taken out of context. She put her hand on my arm for maybe 2 seconds while making a point about market trends. I moved away immediately. I know. Then why do you look like you don't believe me? Because Victoria's words were still in her head. Because the photo looked damning even if the reality wasn't. Because some part of her, the part that had survived too many disappointments, was waiting for the other shoe to drop. She came to my office today, Lena said quietly. Warned me about you. Said you let people get close but never really let them in. Ethan set down his mug carefully. And you believed her. I don't know what I believe. Yes, you do, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. His voice was tight with frustration. What did she say exactly? Lena repeated the conversation. Watched Ethan's expression grow darker with each word. She's manipulating you, he said when she finished. Trying to create doubt where there isn't any. Is there? Doubt, I mean. Not for me. He reached for her hand. She let him take it but didn't squeeze back. Lena, look at me. She did. Victoria and I dated for a few months 5 years ago. It wasn't serious. When Sarah died, Victoria wanted to help, but I couldn't let anyone close. Not her, not anyone. She took it personally. We haven't spoken more than a handful of words since then, and those were all polite small talk at industry events. She still has feelings for you. That's not my problem, or my responsibility. His grip tightened. What we have, it's real. You know that. Do I? Because 3 months ago, this was a contract, a performance. It stopped being just that weeks ago, and you know it. Lena pulled her hand away, standing. I don't know anything anymore. I don't know if I'm reading this right, or if I'm just seeing what I want to see because the alternative is admitting I made another mistake. I'm not a mistake. You're a billionaire who hired me to play your fiancé. How is that not a recipe for disaster? Ethan stood too, his voice rising. Because we went into this honest. Because we chose to make it real. You chose. I went along because I was desperate. The words landed like a slap. Ethan went very still. Is that what you think? That you're just going along? Lena's eyes burned. I don't know what I think. I need some air. She grabbed her coat and left before he could respond, taking the elevator down to the street. The night was cold, sharp, exactly what she needed. She walked without direction, trying to sort through the tangle in her chest. Victoria was playing games. She knew that. The photo was designed to create exactly this kind of doubt. But the doubt had teeth because it was rooted in truth. Lena had started this desperate and grateful. And maybe some part of her was still just the girl from South Philly who couldn't believe someone like Ethan Cole would actually want her for real. Her phone buzzed. Margaret. Where are you? The old woman's voice was sharp. Walking. Ethan called me, said you two had a fight. We had a conversation. Don't be obtuse. Get back to the penthouse. Now. I need time to think. You can think there. With him. Running away solves nothing. Margaret's voice softened slightly. I know Victoria got in your head. Don't let her win. This isn't about winning. Everything is about winning when Richard Cole is involved. And make no mistake, Lena, Victoria is working for him. This is a coordinated attack. Lena stopped walking. What? Richard's been funding her business for the last year. Did you think she showed up at the engagement party by coincidence? That she happened to be at that restaurant tonight? Margaret's laugh was bitter. She's a weapon, and you're letting her hit the target. Lena's stomach turned. How do you know this? Because I make it my business to know everything about people who threaten my family. Now get back to that apartment and talk to my son. Actually talk, not run. The line went dead. Lena stood on the sidewalk, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. She'd been played. Victoria had come in with sympathy and warnings, planted seeds of doubt, and then arranged for that photo to water them. It was surgical, effective, and Lena had fallen for it completely. She turned and headed back, shame burning in her throat. Ethan was on the couch where she'd left him, head in his hands. He looked up when she walked in, relief and hurt warring on his face. I'm sorry, Lena said before he could speak. Your mother called, explained about Victoria and your father. I should have told you myself. I didn't want to make it a bigger thing than it was. It is a big thing. Your father's using her to mess with us. With you, Ethan corrected. He knows I won't break. So he's trying to break you instead. Lena sat beside him, leaving space between them. I let her get in my head. She's good at it. That's why Richard hired her. I should have trusted you. You should have trusted yourself. He finally looked at her, and she saw the exhaustion there. I can't fight Richard and fight for your trust at the same time, Lena. I need to know you're with me. Actually, with me. I am. Are you? Because the second someone plants doubt, you're ready to believe the worst. The accusation stung because it was true. I'm scared. Of what? That this is too good. That I'm going to wake up and it'll be gone. Her voice cracked. I've lost everything before, Ethan. More than once. And every time, I didn't see it coming. His expression softened. He closed the distance between them, pulling her against his chest. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because I'm choosing you. Every day I'm choosing this. He tilted her chin up. But you have to choose it too. Not just when things are easy. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the truth of it settle. I'm not good at this. At letting people in. Neither am I, so we'll figure it out together. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the dim light of the living room. Eventually, Ethan spoke again, his voice rough. Victoria's going to keep pushing. So will my father. They want us to implode from the inside. Then we don't give them the satisfaction. Easier said than done. Most things are. Lena pulled back to look at him. But I meant what I said before. I'm not fragile. I won't shatter the first time things get hard. You almost left tonight. I came back. This time. She heard the fear under his words, that she'd run when things got bad, just like everyone else in his life had, that he'd invest and she'd disappear. I'm not Sarah, she said quietly. Ethan flinched. I know. Do you? Because it feels like you're waiting for me to die, or leave, or prove I'm not worth the risk. That's not fair. Neither is assuming I'm one fight away from walking. Lena stood, suddenly exhausted. I'm going to bed. You should too. She left him on the couch and went to her room, closing the door with more force than necessary. She wanted to be patient, understanding, but she was tired of paying for other people's mistakes. Sleep didn't come easy. Around 2 a.m, she heard her door open. Ethan's silhouette appeared in the doorway. Can't sleep either? He asked. No? He crossed to the bed, sat on the edge. I'm sorry. You're right. I was holding Sarah's ghost between us. I can't compete with a memory. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be patient while I figure out how to let her go. His voice was raw. She was my wife, the mother of my son, and I killed her. It was an accident. I was driving angry. I looked away. Those are facts. He scrubbed his face. I've spent 5 years building walls, so I'd never care enough to hurt someone like that again. And then you showed up and demolished every single one of them without even trying. Lena sat up, reaching for his hand. You didn't kill her, Ethan. The accident did. The result's the same. No, it's not. Because you're still here. Noah's still here. And you get to choose what you do with that. He looked at their joined hands. I'm choosing you. I just need you to be patient while I learn how. I can do that. But you have to let me in. Actually, in. Not just close enough to feel like progress. Okay? Okay? I'll try. He met her eyes. That's all I can promise. That I'll try. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Ethan ended up staying, both of them fully clothed on top of the covers, hands linked between them. It felt like a truce, maybe even a new beginning. Morning came too fast. Lena woke to Noah jumping on the bed, already dressed and full of energy. Wake up. Grandma's taking me to the museum and she says you should come. Ethan groaned, pulling a pillow over his face. It's Saturday, buddy. I know, museum day. Lena laughed, sitting up. What kind of museum? Natural history. They have dinosaurs. Noah's eyes were wide with excitement. Real ones. Well, real bones, but that counts. That definitely counts, she looked at Ethan. You coming? I have work. He stopped at her expression. Or I can move it to tomorrow. Yay! Noah launched himself at Ethan, who caught him with practiced ease. The museum was exactly what Lena needed. Loud, chaotic, full of kids running between exhibits with the kind of joy that made everything else seem small. Noah dragged them from dinosaur to dinosaur, spouting facts he'd clearly memorized. The Stegosaurus had a brain the size of a walnut, but it was still smart enough to survive millions of years, he explained seriously. Sounds like someone I know, Ethan murmured, looking at Lena. She elbowed him. I heard that. Margaret appeared with coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for Noah. You two look tired. We had a late night, Lena said carefully. I heard. The whole building probably heard. Margaret's expression was knowing. Work it out? Working on it. Good. Because Richard's planning something. I can feel it. Can we not talk about this here? Ethan gestured to Noah, who was now debating with another kid about whether T-Rex could see you if you stood still. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. They spent another hour at the museum before Noah started to fade, his energy finally depleted. On the way home, he fell asleep in the car, head on Lena's shoulder. He trusts you, Margaret observed from the front seat. Lena stroked Noah's hair gently. I trust him too. Children are better judges of character than adults. They don't have agendas. Margaret turned to look at her. Whatever Richard throws at you next, remember that. Noah chose you. That means something. The next attack came on Monday. Lena was in a meeting when Jennifer Mills burst in, tablet in hand and fury on her face. We need to talk. Now. Lena excused herself, following Jennifer to her office. What happened? This. Jennifer turned the tablet around. It was an article, tabloid trash from the look of it, but detailed enough to sting. The headline read, Cinderella Story or Corporate Conspiracy. The story laid out Lena's history, her unemployment, her eviction notice, the convenient timing of meeting Margaret. It painted her as a gold digger at best, a corporate plant at worst. Where did they get this information? Lena asked, her voice hollow. Someone with access to your background check, which means someone inside Apex leaked it. Richard. Or someone working for him. Jennifer's expression was grim. This is bad, Lena. The board's already asking questions. Some members are calling for an investigation into whether you've been feeding Ethan information to manipulate company decisions. That's insane. That's strategy. Richard doesn't need the accusations to be true. He just needs them to be loud enough that people start doubting. Lena sat down hard. What do I do? You fight back. Show them the work you've actually done, the fraud you uncovered, the insights you've provided. Make it impossible for anyone to claim you're not legitimate. And if that's not enough, Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Then you might need to step back, for Ethan's sake. The words hit like a physical blow. You want me to quit? I want you to consider what's best for the company, for Ethan. Jennifer's voice softened. I believe you're here for the right reasons, but sometimes the right reasons don't matter if the optics are wrong. Lena left the office feeling hollow. She went straight to Ethan, found him in a meeting, didn't care that she was interrupting. We need to talk. He took one look at her face and stood. Excuse me. In his office, door closed, she showed him the article. Watched his expression go from confusion to fury. I'm going to destroy him, Ethan said quietly. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. He went after you, dug into your past, twisted it into something ugly. Everything in that article is true, Ethan. I was unemployed. I did have an eviction notice. The timing was convenient. The facts are true. The implications are lies. But people will believe them anyway. Lena sank into a chair. Jennifer thinks I should step back. Let this blow over without me. Absolutely not. It might be the smart play. I don't care about smart. I care about you. He knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands. We don't give Richard what he wants. Not now. Not ever. Even if what he wants is me gone, especially then. His grip tightened. You're not going anywhere unless you want to, and even then, I'm going to fight to make you stay. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they could weather this, but the article felt like proof of what she'd always feared, that she didn't belong in this world, and eventually everyone would see it. What if I'm the liability? She asked quietly. What if staying hurts you more than leaving? Then we deal with it. Together. He pulled her forward until their foreheads touched. I meant what I said last night. I'm choosing you. That doesn't change because my father decided to play dirty. He's going to keep coming. I know, so we hit back harder. That evening, Ethan called a press conference. Lena tried to talk him out of it, but he was immovable. This ends now, he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. I'm not letting him control the narrative anymore. The conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, enough attention to make Lena's skin crawl. She stood off to the side while Ethan took the podium. I'm here to address the recent article about my fiancée, Lena Hart, he began, his voice clear and commanding. The facts presented are accurate. Lena was unemployed when we met. She was facing financial hardship. What the article failed to mention is that she was also the woman who stopped to help my mother when she was injured, despite having somewhere important to be. The woman who gave up a job opportunity to help a stranger. He paused, letting that sink in. Since joining Apex Holdings, Lena has uncovered fraud that saved this company millions of dollars. She's provided insights that have shaped our strategy for the next fiscal year. She's proven herself not just to me, but to the entire executive team. His gaze swept the room. The people questioning her credentials are the same ones who benefit from maintaining the status quo, who see someone from outside their circle and assume she doesn't belong. Mr. Cole, a reporter called out, are you saying the concerns are baseless? I'm saying the concerns are manufactured by someone with an agenda, and I think we all know who that someone is. Are you accusing your father? I'm stating facts. Richard Cole has been trying to undermine my leadership for years. Lena is just his latest target, and it's not going to work. Another reporter. What about the accusations that your relationship is affecting your judgment? My judgment has never been clearer. I'm engaged to a woman who's intelligent, capable, and stronger than anyone gives her credit for. That's not a liability. That's an asset. He looked directly at the camera. To anyone questioning whether Lena Hart deserves to be where she is, she's earned it 10 times over, and I dare you to prove otherwise. The conference ended in a flurry of questions Ethan didn't answer. He walked off the podium, found Lena, and pulled her into a side room away from the cameras. "That was reckless," she said. "That was necessary. You basically declared war on your father in front of the entire business world." "Good. Let him know I'm done playing defense." He cupped her face. "I'm done letting him hurt the people I love." The word hung between them. Love. He'd said it, out loud, in a way that couldn't be taken back. "Ethan, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but it's true." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I love you, and I'm not letting him take that away." Lena's eyes burned. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's real." She kissed him then, hard and desperate, trying to pour everything she couldn't say into the connection between them. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "I love you too," she whispered. "Even though I shouldn't, even though it's terrifying." Terrifying is good, means it matters. They stayed like that, holding each other in a borrowed room while the world outside buzzed with speculation and Richard Cole plotted his next move. And in that moment, Lena realized something important. She'd stopped running, stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was fighting instead, and she had no intention of losing. The press conference changed everything and nothing at all. Public opinion split down the middle. Half the internet thought Ethan was a romantic hero defending his love. The other half thought he was a fool being manipulated. Richard Cole gave his own interview 2 days later, all wounded father concern, saying he just wanted what was best for his son and the company. He never mentioned Lena by name. He didn't have to. The board called an emergency meeting for Friday. "They're going to force a vote," Margaret said Thursday night. The three of them gathered in her penthouse like generals planning a war. Richard's convinced enough members that Ethan's compromised. They want him to step down temporarily while an independent review is conducted. "A review of what?" Lena asked. "We haven't done anything wrong." "Since when does that matter?" Margaret's voice was bitter. "Corporate politics isn't about right and wrong. It's about who tells the better story." Ethan stood by the window, his back to them. "If I step down, even temporarily, Richard will make sure I never get back in. He'll install someone loyal to him, dismantle everything we've built." "So we don't let you step down," Lena said. "And how do we stop them? We don't have the votes." Lena had been thinking about this for days, turning possibilities over in her mind. "What if we gave them what they want?" Both Margaret and Ethan turned to stare at her. "Explain," Margaret said. "They think I'm the problem. The distraction. The proof that Ethan's making emotional decisions." Lena's heart was hammering, but her voice stayed steady. "So I remove myself from the equation." "Absolutely not," Ethan said immediately. "Hear me out. I step back from Apex, publicly end the engagement. Show the board that you're capable of making hard choices for the good of the company." That's exactly what Richard wants. In the short term, yes. But think long term. If I'm gone, his whole argument falls apart. He can't claim you're distracted by your personal life if there is no personal life. And once the heat dies down, once he's played his hand and lost, she looked at Margaret. "We come back stronger." Margaret's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You want to give Richard the win so we can destroy him later. I want to take away his ammunition. Let him think he's won." And then Lena pulled out her phone, showed them photos she'd been collecting, financial documents, emails, connections between Richard and the regional director who'd been embezzling. "We show the board exactly what kind of man he really is." Ethan crossed to her, taking the phone. His expression shifted as he scrolled. "Where did you get these?" "I've been digging, following the money from the fraud case. It all traces back to Richard. He knew about the embezzlement, probably orchestrated it. He was siphoning money through that director for years." "This is enough to destroy him," Margaret breathed. But only if we time it right. If we use it now, he'll claim we're making it up to discredit him, that we're desperate." Lena looked at Ethan. "But if I step back, if you show you're willing to put the company first, and then this comes out, it looks like justice, not revenge." Ethan set the phone down carefully. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for the worst. That's different. It's also smart. Margaret stood, moving to examine the documents more closely. We'd need to move carefully. Make sure everything's airtight. But yes, this could work. No. Ethan's voice was flat. We're not using Lena as bait. I'm not bait. I'm strategy. You're the woman I love, and I'm not throwing you to the wolves to win a corporate game. Even if it saves everything you've built, especially then. He pulled her to face him. I meant what I said at that press conference. I'm done sacrificing the people I care about for business. There has to be another way. There isn't, Margaret said quietly. Richard's backed us into a corner. We either fight our way out or we lose everything, including each other. The words hung heavy. Lena saw the moment Ethan understood, that sometimes love meant making the hard choice, not the easy one. How long? He asked, his voice rough. How long would you have to be gone? A month, maybe 6 weeks. Long enough for Richard to relax, to think he's safe. Lena took his hands, and then we bring him down so hard he never gets back up. And us? We wait, we're patient, and when it's over, we get to be real without anyone questioning it. Ethan pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair. I hate this. I know. If something goes wrong, it won't. You can't know that. No, but I trust us. She pulled back to look at him. Do you? His jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. Yeah, I do. They spent that night planning every detail. Lena would resign from Apex Friday morning before the board meeting. The engagement would end in a carefully worded statement, mutual decision, respect, and care, but incompatible lives. It would look mature, reasonable, exactly what a man putting business first would do. Meanwhile, Margaret would work the board members she trusted, planting seeds of doubt about Richard. Nothing concrete yet, just questions, concerns. By the time they revealed the evidence, the ground would already be soft. Friday morning came too fast. Lena dressed for the office one last time, stood in front of the mirror trying to recognize herself. 6 months ago, she'd been unemployed, desperate, willing to do anything to survive. Now she was orchestrating the downfall of a billionaire while pretending to walk away from the man she loved. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Noah found her in the hallway. Are you okay? You look sad. Lena knelt down to his level. I'm a little sad, but it's going to be okay. Dad says you're leaving, that you have to go away for work. They'd agreed not to tell Noah the full truth. He was 5. He didn't need the weight of their corporate war. Just for a little while. But I'll come back. I promise. You better. We still have to finish our dinosaur project. We will. Every single dinosaur in order of how cool they are. He hugged her tight, and Lena held on longer than she should have, memorizing the feeling. At Apex, Lena went straight to Jennifer Mills' office. I'm resigning, effective immediately. Jennifer looked up from her computer, surprise flickering across her face. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. For the company. For Ethan. Does he know? It was a mutual decision. Jennifer studied her for a long moment. I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me. You just have to accept my resignation. The board's going to see this as proof they were right, that you were the problem. Let them. Lena set her badge and laptop on the desk. Sometimes the only way to win is to let the other side think they did. She left before Jennifer could ask more questions. Her office was already being cleared. Margaret had arranged it, efficient as always. Lena took one last look at the space where she'd proven herself, then walked out without looking back. The statement went out at noon. By 1, the internet was ablaze with speculation. Had Ethan dumped her? Had she realized she was in over her head? The narratives multiplied, each more dramatic than the last. Lena's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She turned it off, went to the small apartment Margaret had secured for her. Neutral territory, nowhere Richard's people could track her. It felt like stepping backward in time, to those desperate months before Margaret had found her. Except now she had a plan, a purpose, and the knowledge that this was temporary. She just had to survive the waiting. The board meeting happened without her. Ethan faced down Richard's accusations alone, reportedly calm and composed. He acknowledged that his personal life had been a distraction, that ending the engagement was about putting the company first. Several board members apparently looked uncomfortable. They'd pushed for exactly this, but seeing Ethan actually do it made them question whether they'd been manipulated. Richard pushed for the vote anyway. It failed, 7-5. Ethan kept his position, but it was close enough to be a warning. Margaret called that night. Phase 1 complete. He thinks he won. Is he okay? He's furious, barely holding it together. But he's playing the part. A pause. He wants to talk to you. We agreed no contact for 2 weeks, so it looks real. I know what we agreed. I'm telling you what he wants. Lena closed her eyes. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him to trust the plan. Tell him yourself. He's standing right here. The phone changed hands. Ethan's voice came through, rough and tired. Hey. Hey. I hate this. I know. The apartment Margaret got you, is it okay? Do you need anything? It's fine, I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Despite everything, Lena smiled. So are you. How was the meeting really? Richard looked smug. The board looked uncomfortable. I looked like someone who just gave up the best thing in his life for a company. His voice dropped, which isn't far from the truth. It's temporary. I know. Doesn't make it easier. She heard him breathe. Margaret found more evidence. Bank transfers, communications. Richard wasn't just funding the embezzlement. He was planning to use it to force a buyout. Let the company bleed, then sweep in as the savior. That's bold. That's Richard. He plays long games. A pause. We need another week to tie everything together. Can you handle another week of this? Lena looked around the small apartment, felt the absence of Noah's laughter, Ethan's presence. I can handle whatever it takes. I love you. I love you too, which is why we're doing this right. They hung up, and Lena sat in the silence, wondering if doing something right was supposed to hurt this much. The week crawled past. Lena stayed away from social media, away from anything that might show her what people were saying. She focused on organizing the evidence, building an airtight case. Margaret visited twice, bringing updates and takeout that Lena barely touched. You look terrible, Margaret observed on the second visit. Thanks. I mean it. When's the last time you slept? I sleep. Lying in bed staring at the ceiling doesn't count. Margaret set down the bag of Thai food. This is almost over. Richard's getting sloppy. He thinks he's safe, so he's making moves he wouldn't normally risk. We've tracked 3 more questionable transactions just this week. How's Ethan? Focused, angry. He threw a phone at the wall yesterday when a reporter asked if he regretted the engagement. What did he say? That his personal life wasn't up for discussion. But I saw his face. He wanted to burn the building down. Margaret's expression softened. He's holding on because he trusts you. Don't make him regret it. I won't. On day 12, everything came together. Margaret called an emergency board meeting citing urgent financial irregularities. Richard showed up confident, probably thinking this was another of Margaret's failed attempts to discredit him. He didn't know she'd spent 2 weeks building an army. Lena watched from a video feed in Margaret's office. She wasn't supposed to be there, but Margaret had insisted, "You earned this. You should see it." The boardroom filled. Richard took his usual seat, relaxed and smiling. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his expression giving nothing away. Margaret stood. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We've discovered a situation that requires immediate attention and action. She laid out the evidence methodically. The embezzlement traced back to Richard. The bank transfers. The emails proving he knew. The plan to let the company suffer so he could force a buyout at a fraction of its value. With each revelation, Richard's expression shifted. Confidence to confusion to fear to rage. This is fabricated, he said when she finished. A desperate attempt to... We have your signature on the transfer authorizations, Jennifer Mills interrupted. She'd been working with Margaret, apparently, verifying every piece of evidence. We have emails from your personal account. We have testimony from the regional director you paid off. This isn't fabrication. This is documentation. You have no proof I knew what he was doing with that money. We have you on tape. Ethan spoke for the first time, his voice cold as winter. You met with him 6 times over the last year. We have security footage. We have transcripts of conversations where you explicitly discussed hiding the losses. Richard's face went white. That's illegal surveillance. That's standard security protocol. You signed off on it yourself 3 years ago. Ethan leaned forward. You tried to destroy this company. You tried to destroy my family. And you used my personal life as cover while you did it. The board will never— The board already has, Margaret said. We took a preliminary vote before this meeting. It was unanimous. You're out, Richard, effective immediately. And if you try to fight this, we'll press criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. The room was silent. Richard looked around the table, seeing the truth on every face. They'd turned on him, completely. He stood, slowly, his hands shaking. For a moment, Lena almost felt sorry for him. Then she remembered Victoria's manipulation, the article tearing apart her past, the fear in Noah's eyes when he thought she was leaving. The pity evaporated. You think you've won, Richard said quietly. But this isn't over. You'll what? Ethan's voice was steel. Sue? With what money? Your assets are frozen pending investigation. Threaten? We have enough evidence to put you in prison. All you have left is an exit and the chance to take it while you still can. Richard's jaw worked. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the silence. No one spoke for a long moment. Then one of the board members cleared his throat. I believe we owe you an apology, Ethan, and Ms. Hart, wherever she is. We allowed ourselves to be manipulated. Yes, Ethan said flatly. You did. Will she be returning to the company? That's her decision. But if she does, I expect her to be treated with the respect she's earned. Is that clear? Murmurs of agreement around the table. The meeting adjourned, and Lena sat back in Margaret's office chair, her hands shaking. It was over. Actually over. Margaret came in 20 minutes later, Ethan right behind her. He saw Lena and crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her up and into his arms. It's done, he said into her hair. He's gone. It's done. Lena held on tight, feeling the tension drain out of both of them. I saw. You were amazing. We were amazing. He pulled back to look at her. No more hiding. No more plans. We're done playing games. What about the engagement, the contract? Expired last week. Technically, we've been operating without it for days. Lena blinked. I didn't even notice. Neither did I. Because it stopped being about the contract weeks ago. He cupped her face. So I'm asking you now for real. No agreements, no strategy. Just us. Will you stay? Where else would I go? I need to hear you say it. Yes, I'll stay, for as long as you'll have me. Good, because I'm thinking forever, and I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Margaret cleared her throat. If you two are done being disgustingly romantic, we have work to do. Lena needs to be reinstated, the press needs a statement, and someone needs to tell Noah his favorite person is coming home. The word caught in Lena's throat. Home. Not the penthouse, not the job, the people, the life they'd built in the cracks between performance and reality. She was going home. The next few days were chaos. Richard disappeared. Rumors said he'd left the country, though no one knew for sure. Victoria Ashford's business collapsed when her connection to Richard became public. The board issued a formal apology to Lena and offered her any position she wanted. She chose to stay as Margaret's liaison because she'd learned she was good at seeing connections others missed. And because Margaret had become more than a boss, she'd become family. The press wanted interviews, photos, explanations. Ethan and Lena gave them nothing except a brief statement. They were together, they were happy, and their private life would remain private. Most outlets respected it. The ones that didn't found themselves dealing with very expensive lawyers. Noah's reaction to Lena coming home was everything she needed. He'd launched himself at her the moment she walked through the door, chattering about everything she'd missed, showing her the drawings he'd made, the new dinosaur facts he'd learned. I knew you'd come back, he said seriously. You promised. I did, and I keep my promises. Good, because I don't like it when people leave. The weight behind those words made Lena's chest ache. He was talking about his mother, about loss he was too young to fully understand. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. You're stuck with me now. Forever? She glanced at Ethan, who was watching them with an expression she'd learned to recognize, love mixed with fear mixed with hope. Forever, she confirmed. That night, after Noah was asleep, Lena and Ethan ended up on the balcony with wine and the kind of exhausted relief that comes after surviving something terrible. Margaret told me something today, Ethan said, about the divorce settlement. What about it? She's transferring shares to you, 20% of her holdings in Apex. Lena nearly dropped her glass. What? No, I can't. She insists, says you earned them by saving the company, and she wants to make sure you have security that's not dependent on me or anyone else. That's millions of dollars. Closer to 50 million, actually, give or take. Lena's brain short-circuited. I can't accept that. You can, and you will. Because she's right. You did save the company, and because she wants to make sure no one ever questions your value again. He set down his glass, taking her hand. You're not the desperate girl from South Philly anymore, Lena. You're a stakeholder, a partner, someone who belongs at that table. I still feel like I'm pretending. That's called imposter syndrome. Successful people get it all the time. He smiled. You'll get used to it. Or you won't, and you'll just keep proving yourself over and over until you believe what everyone else already knows. Which is that you're extraordinary, that you see things others miss, that you're brave enough to stand in a boardroom and call out fraud, even when you've only been with the company for 3 weeks. His voice softened. That you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Lena leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. I keep waiting for it to fall apart. It won't. You can't know that. No. But I can choose to believe it anyway. Choose to build something that lasts instead of waiting for it to crumble. He pressed a kiss to her temple. That's what love is, I think. Choosing hope even when fear makes more sense. She'd spent so long choosing fear, protecting herself, expecting the worst, running before she could be pushed. But sitting here with Ethan, in a life she'd built from desperation and determination, she realized fear had never actually kept her safe. It had just kept her small. I'm choosing hope, she said quietly. I'm choosing this, us, all of it. Good, because I have something to ask you. He stood, pulling her up with him. Then he dropped to one knee and Lena's heart stopped. Wait, let me finish. He pulled out a ring, different from the one in the contract, simpler and somehow more beautiful. 6 months ago, I hired you to solve a problem. You solved it, and about a dozen I didn't even know I had. You made my son laugh again. You made this apartment feel like a home. You made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just functional. Lena's vision blurred. I don't have a contract this time. No timeline, no exit strategy, just a question. He looked up at her, vulnerable and certain all at once. Will you marry me? For real this time? She wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to pull him up and kiss him and forget about every complication. But there were things that needed to be said first. I'm going to drive you crazy, she said. I'm going to question things and push back and probably make a dozen mistakes. I'm counting on it. And I'm going to need time to adjust to all of this. The money, the attention, the fact that I'm apparently a stakeholder in a multi-billion-dollar company. Take all the time you need. And sometimes I'm going to be scared that I'm not enough, that I don't belong, that this is all going to disappear. Then I'll remind you why you're wrong. Every single day, if I have to. His voice roughened. Lena, will you marry me? She looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the life stretching out before them. Imperfect, complicated, real. Yes. He stood, sliding the ring onto her finger, and kissed her like he'd been waiting his entire life to do it. Maybe he had. Maybe they both had, waiting for someone to see past their defenses to the messy, difficult truth underneath. They pulled apart when air became necessary, foreheads pressed together, both of them smiling. Noah's going to lose his mind, Ethan said. Good. He can help plan the wedding. You sure about that? He's 5. It'll involve a lot of dinosaurs. I like dinosaurs. I know. It's one of the many reasons I love you. They stayed on the balcony until the city lights blurred into stars and the wine bottle emptied. Talked about the wedding. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Talked about the future. Lena wanted to expand her role at Apex, maybe start a foundation focused on helping people like her younger self. Ethan wanted to spend more time with Noah, less time fighting corporate battles. Neither of them mentioned the contract that had brought them together because it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the choice they kept making, to show up, to be honest, to build something that could survive imperfection. 3 months later, they got married in Margaret's garden. Noah was the ring bearer and took his job so seriously he practiced walking down the aisle 17 times. Margaret cried, which she claimed was allergies, but everyone knew better. Lena's mother flew in from Philadelphia, overwhelmed and proud in equal measure. Victoria Ashford sent a gift, expensive, impersonal. The card said, "Congratulations." Lena donated it to charity and never thought about it again. Richard Cole sent nothing. Last anyone heard, he was living in Monaco, broke and bitter. Margaret had ensured he'd never work in American business again. It wasn't revenge, she said. It was consequences. The ceremony was simple. Lena wore a dress that didn't cost a fortune. Ethan cried when he saw her, which made Noah announce loudly that Dad's leaking again, which made everyone laugh. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about honesty and patience and choosing each other even when it was hard. When the officiant said they could kiss, Noah yelled, "Finally!" and the gathering erupted in laughter and applause. At the reception, Lena found herself standing with Margaret, watching Ethan dance with Noah to a song about dinosaurs. "You did good," Margaret said. "So did you. I just pointed you in the right direction. You did the rest." She sipped her champagne. "I knew, that morning you helped me. I knew you were exactly what this family needed." "You couldn't have known that. I knew you had character. That's rarer than people think." Margaret turned to look at her. "Thank you. For saving my son. For giving him a reason to live instead of just survive." Lena's throat tightened. "He saved me too." "I know. That's how it works when it's real." Ethan appeared, stealing Lena for a dance. They swayed to music that was too loud and slightly off-tempo, surrounded by people who loved them, and it was perfect in its imperfection. "Happy?" Ethan asked, terrified, but yeah, happy. "Good, because you're stuck with me now." "That was always the plan." "Was it?" Lena thought about the broken sidewalk grate, the eviction notice, the moment she'd decided to help a stranger, even though it cost her everything. She thought about signing a contract in a glass office, about board meetings and corporate warfare, about falling in love when she was supposed to be pretending. "Yeah," she said. "I think maybe it was." 6 months after the wedding, Lena found out she was pregnant. She told Ethan over breakfast while Noah debated the merits of Triceratops versus Ankylosaurus. He dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the kitchen floor. There's a baby. Yes, due in 7 months. Noah looked up. "I'm getting a sibling?" "Looks like it." He considered this seriously. "Okay, but they better like dinosaurs." Ethan was still frozen, coffee pooling around his feet. Lena stood, took his face in her hands. "Breathe." He breathed. Then he kissed her, careful and reverent, like she was made of something precious. "We're having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We're having a baby. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out." "Like we figure everything else out?" "Exactly like that." Noah tugged on Lena's sleeve. "Can we name the baby Rexy?" "Absolutely not." "But it's a good name." "It's a great name for a dinosaur, not so much for a human." They spent the morning cleaning up coffee and debating baby names and calling Margaret, who declared herself officially too young to be called Grandma and would accept only Gran as a compromise. Lena's mother cried on the phone. Ethan's hands shook while making lunch. It was chaos and joy and the kind of messy beautiful that real life was made of. 7 months later, Lena gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Margaret Cole. The name made Ethan cry, made Margaret cry, made everyone cry except Noah, who announced that his sister was small but acceptable. Sarah had Lena's eyes and Ethan's stubborn chin. She was colicky and difficult and perfect. Life settled into a new rhythm. Lena balanced being a mother with her work at Apex, where she'd started a program helping young professionals from underprivileged backgrounds break into corporate careers. Ethan cut his hours, spending more time at home. Noah appointed himself Sarah's protector and teacher, explaining dinosaur facts to her in great detail, despite her being 3 months old. They weren't perfect. They fought about ridiculous things. Whose turn it was to handle the 2 a.m. feeding, whether Noah could have ice cream for breakfast, how to split holidays between Lena's family in Philadelphia and their life in New York. Ethan still struggled with letting people in. Lena still had moments where she felt like an imposter in her own life. But they showed up for each other, chose each other. built something that could survive imperfection because it was rooted in something real. On their second anniversary, Ethan gave Lena a gift, the original contract, framed. "Why would you frame this?" she asked, laughing. "Because it reminds me that the best things start in unexpected places, that sometimes you have to take a risk on something that doesn't make sense." He pulled her close. "That love doesn't always look like what you think it should." Lena looked at the contract, at the signatures that had bound them before they'd chosen to bind themselves. "You know what I learned?" "What?" "That kindness matters. That stopping to help someone, even when it costs you, can change everything. That the choices we make when we think no one's watching are the ones that define us." Deep thoughts from someone who started this by getting stuck in a sidewalk grate. Hey, that sidewalk grate changed my life. It changed both our lives. They stood together in the home they'd built, listening to Noah read Sarah a story about a T-Rex who was afraid of the dark, and Lena thought about how far she'd come. From desperate and unemployed to this, a family, a career, a life that felt earned rather than borrowed. She'd learned that worth wasn't something you were born with or given. It was something you built, choice by choice, day by day. That love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up even when things were hard. That family wasn't just blood. It was the people who chose to stay. And she'd learned that sometimes the biggest risks led to the greatest rewards. That a broken sidewalk and an act of kindness could set in motion a chain of events that changed everything. She wasn't the girl who'd arrived at Apex Holdings soaking wet and desperate anymore. But she carried that girl with her, a reminder of where she'd been, what she'd survived, and how much she'd grown. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. "That I'd do it all again, every hard part, every scary moment, because it led here. Even the parts where you wanted to kill me? Especially those parts. They taught me I was strong enough to fight for what I wanted." He kissed her temple. "For the record, you were always strong enough. You just didn't know it yet." From the nursery, Noah called out, "Lena, Sarah's crying and I don't know why." "That's because she's a baby," Lena called back. "Crying is kind of their thing." "Well, can you make her stop? I'm trying to explain the Cretaceous period." Lena and Ethan looked at each other and laughed. This was their life now, dinosaur lectures and crying babies and love that had started as a contract and become something neither of them could have predicted. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. And as Lena went to rescue Sarah from her brother's well-meaning educational assault, she thought about the old woman in the expensive coat, trapped in a broken sidewalk, about the choice to stop and help even when it cost everything. That choice had saved them both. Sometimes, Lena realized, the most important thing you can do is show up for someone when they need it. Be kind when it's easier to walk away. Take a risk on connection even when fear says it's safer to stay alone. Because you never know which act of compassion will change your life. Which moment of vulnerability will lead to something beautiful? Which leap of faith will catch air instead of crashing? Margaret had seen something in her that day. Potential, maybe. Or just basic human decency in a world that often lacked it. Whatever it was, it had been enough to start everything that came after. And standing in her home, with her husband in the next room and her children filling the air with noise and life, Lena understood something fundamental. Worth wasn't something you proved to other people. It was something you decided for yourself. She was worthy. She'd always been worthy. It had just taken a broken sidewalk, a billionaire's contract, and falling in love when she wasn't supposed to for her to finally believe it.